Okay, good morning. We'll resume. Anybody have pecuniary interest with respect to what we're covering today? If so, please let me know at the time, okay? All right, so we left off at 7.5, and it was the last item at 7.5. But before we get back on the last point, which is the Elmvale, Yonge Street North and George Street, I believe CEO Schmidt wants to update us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, members of council and staff and our millions and millions online watching today. At any rate, what I wanted to do is kind of just set the stage and go do a little bit of a history walk, I guess, as to where we started here with the 2020 budget, and then also look at the decisions that council has made to date, and just provide an update as to where we currently stand today as it relates to the levy requirement and or surplus position we may be in. So I have maybe about 6 or 7 slides to go through here, so bear with me if you can. So on November 20th, you may recall, we did present the draft 2020 budget without program changes, but with the assessment growth, we came in with a net surplus of around $95,000. Excuse me. And then at that same meeting, there was a number of township proposed program changes, which those equated to roughly $163,000, and those ones are listed here on the slide. And then also at that same meeting on November 20th, there was 3 different program changes from our, what we call our service partners, so 2 from the library, 1 from the SSEA, and those amounted to just under $130,000. So at the bottom of the slide, from a summary perspective, if we take the $95,000 surplus, we take the $163,000 in the township program changes, and we take the roughly $130,000 in service partner program changes, we were at a position where we were requesting $197,000 additional money over last year, so 1.49% from just township perspective. So subsequent to that, again, if we start at the 197 at the top of this slide, and we take into consideration the decisions that were made by council on November 25th, and these only take into account the decisions that have a tax impact. So just to be clear on that, actually there's a microphone on here too. So on November 25th, council made 2 decisions as it relates to the program changes for the library. And so the decisions there essentially led to a reduction of $115,000 of that 197. So as of November 25th, we were in a position of asking for an additional $81,000, just over $81,000. So again, on the next slide here, starting with that request of $81,000 on December 2nd, there was 2 decisions there. The public works assistant didn't have a tax impact, and the decision to increase the council discretionary fund from $3,000 to $5,000, so that there would be $1,000 set aside for each ward. That required a $2,000 increase to our taxes, so just under $84,000 was the request as of December 2nd. And then again, starting at the $83,500 on December 2nd, on December 9th, there was a number of decisions made by council. So the addition of the Floss Road 6 West conversion from to hardtop, gravel to hardtop, that we're proposing to be gas tax funded, so no net tax impact. There was the deferral of the 3 road projects. The 2 Coghlan Road and Floss Road 4 East were not funded by taxes. They were funded by a portion from debt and a portion from gas tax. And so no net tax impact on those 2. However, the Floss Road 10 East did have that was deferred, and there was a component of that project that was originally proposed to be funded from taxation. So there is a savings there of just under $63,000. Then Grenfell Road conversion from gravel to hardtop was also added in, and we're proposing that be funded from gas taxes, so no net tax impact. And then there was a decision to remove the Doran Park tennis lights. That was proposed to be funded from taxes, so that was a reduction of $75,000 in taxes. And then two more projects, the Homer Barrett Park rink boards were originally proposed at $80,000 to be funded from taxation, so that is another reduction of $80,000. And then finally, the new public works vehicle, which was proposed, and that had an investment of $50,000 to be funded from taxation. So as of this morning, or as of, I guess, December 9th, before we get into any discussion today, we're sitting at roughly $184,000 surplus. So we don't need, at this point, any additional dollars from taxes in 2020. So what does that translate into from an average taxpayer perspective? And again, this is based on all of that information. It doesn't include any decisions that will be made today. So essentially, from a township's perspective, we're actually looking at a reduction, so about a $22.78 reduction. Again, for an average residential property assessed at $478,000. So that equates to roughly a 1.39% reduction. The county has approved their 2020 budget. It comes in at about $27, just under $27, or 2%. And overall, it's about a 3.94%, or $3.94 increase for an average taxpayer assessed at $478,000, or a 0.1 blended increase. So that's where we currently stand as of today. And other than that, I will pass things back to the mayor, and we can take a look at motions and/or the Elmville crosswalk. I think is the first thing that we wanted to discuss
Okay,
today.
thank you, Seo. Before we do that, are there any questions with respect to this presentation? Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to the CAO. Could you go to slide 6 for me, please? So I guess if you could explain then the net tax impact of 0.47%, we then save $75,000. Why does that net tax impact go up? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Moore. So the $62,000, so if we start at the very top of this slide, we were in a position where we were requesting an additional $83,000 based on all the decisions that had been made by council up until, including December 2nd. On December 9th, there was a number of these projects that were added and or deferred. So on the, specifically on the Dorn Park tennis lights, that project had a gross cost of $75,000, of which 100% of that was to be funded from taxes. So what we do is on the net tax impact, we determine what that is in equation to a 1%. So we take the $75,000, divide it by what a 1% tax increase is, which is roughly $132,000. That's what it equates to, 0.57% reduction.
Follow on?
Thank you. So I was looking at it like a simple math equation,
Oh.
you know, where you add and subtract. So
Yeah.
my apologies.
Yeah. So if we take these ones and deduct them off of the 83,000 as well as these two, the two at the top, we come to the full 184. Okay.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you. I too was trying to do some math to figure out all the deferrals that we have put forth to push into 2021, and understanding that typically there's about a 2% increase. My concern is that we're focusing really hard on getting the 2020 budget as low as we can, but I don't want to have, say to residents, we have a 0.2 or 0.1 increase this year, and next year we're looking at a 6% increase. And I'm just curious if there's, I myself couldn't figure that out. I'm just curious if there's any way to know how much we are pushing into 2021.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Coghlan. So good question. From a tax perspective, as it relates to the amount of money that we take out of our operating budget to support our capital as one potential item. So in 2020, that component is roughly just over $700,000. However, when we compare that to what's being proposed and or deferred to 2021, that increases to almost $2 million. So a $1.3 million increase, if you will. that is also subject to council making decisions on what the 2020 plan could be, right? So, but right now, by deferring what we've done, essentially, yeah, it's a $1.3 million differential or increase.
And I would add that we just, in the motions that we passed, we shifted them to 2021 for consideration, not commitment to proceed with those in 2021 necessarily.
Correct. The 2020 capital, the 2020 year is the first year of the 10-year, and that's the capital budget, but the 9 years remaining is just the plan, which is subject to change.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and again, I guess just a comment. I do agree with making sure that we're making responsible decisions. My concern is that by just pushing it off, we're not essentially dealing with the pressures that, as a growing corporation, we're experiencing, whether it come to staff or recreation projects or capital or ongoing projects. And just even hearing today that the Public Works Assistant had no tax impact and we're sitting with a surplus. And yet, I guess this is the first time in 5 years or 5 budgets that I've been trying to fully understand how or why we're doing this. So I guess I'm just asking council to bear with me as I try and move forward with this, because it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make sense not to spread. As a resident, as a taxpayer, I would rather have a consistent increase, something that I can expect yearly. Whereas I look at other municipalities who are putting budgets in at 8 and 9% to play catch up because they had focused on having a 0% for so long. So I'm just looking at the next 3 years that we'll be, or the next 3 budgets that, or 2 that we'll be doing as a council together. And I think that we're maybe putting a lot of pressure on ourselves in years to come.
Okay. I think by the time we finish, though, that bracketed number will be a positive number, but we shall see with the final results. Any other questions before we move on to 8.2, final item? Okay, so 8.2, in the final item where we left off last time, there was a motion moved by Cabral, seconded by Councillor Ritchie, that council approve the PXO crosswalk at Yonge Street North and George Street, and that this project be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2020 budget. And I believe last meeting that the estimate of cost with respect to that was $100,000. So I'll open up the floor for discussion. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just, I guess, to reiterate same comments on Monday. The seniors have been looking for this for some time. It has been moved over here. It had full support of council on that motion, and I would ask that council certainly support it once again. And I will be asking for a recorded vote as well. Thank you.
Other comments? Okay. I will not be supporting this year. I do think that the more study needs to be made with respect to this. It might be something that should be considered in the capital plan for next year or subsequent years, but I think we're rushing too quickly to commit $100,000 with respect to this, given the fact that there are 4 other sets of lights in Elmville. Okay, proceed with the vote, please. Oh, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, and having numerous conversations about this and understanding that it will come back to council again as we move forward with design and what's going to happen. Again, I think that this is a need within the community. It's been identified and it's been requested. I will be supporting it as we move forward. And I do look forward to figuring out exactly the location and what's going to be offered to residents. But again, this is something that I think that we need to move forward with.
Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I guess we're in the same position as we have been with the other crossing lights. There is no supporting documentation. However, we do know that we are speaking about the seniors in Elmville trying to get around. And you're correct, there's not 4 sets, there's 3 sets currently in Elmville. And as I said, I did seek supporting documentation and reports on those sets of lights to see how they came about. I don't know if there were any delegations per se on any of them because none of those reports were forthcoming. However, we do know that the seniors have been looking for this for some time, and I really think that it's up to us based on the difficulties seniors have and the statistics regarding seniors and how long it takes for them to recover when they are hit by a vehicle as opposed to a young person. And in addition to that, their perception difficulties in trying to determine when they can have that safe gap. So I really feel that we need to proceed with this now. I think now is an opportune time to put that satellites in there. It's already pre-wired, and I'd like to see it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Once you consider the lights at Queen and Yonge, aren't there, and then 3 other lights and crosswalks, aren't there 4 in total?
You are right. I'm sorry, Mayor Allen. I thought you were speaking to the peripheral ones.
No. Okay, Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. My question would be, if we put those set of crosswalk lights in and then the lights at the corner, would the traffic be backed up?
I'll open it up to any comment. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Since they're going to be operated when someone wants to cross the street, the momentary backing up of traffic would only happen at that time. The reality, I think, would be that if we have backed up traffic now, that set of lights is actually going to make it easier for pedestrians to cross when that type of backup is actually occurring, because people are going to stop at the red light and not mosey on the next 10 or 15 feet to get ahead of the game. So it's roughly the same distance from the main set of lights in town as the one at Howden by the church is. And I would suspect that the one on Queen Street would be relatively about the same distance too. However, I can't speak to the one at the library. I think it's further away.
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just another question, because I can't figure out whereabouts. Is it past Foodland or just at Foodland?
The answer was right at Foodland. Okay, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I want to just comment, though, that I do support Councillor Cabral's motion to have the PXO crossover done in that location. I think seniors, unfortunately, are not being recognized as a vulnerable population in a lot of cases. And when we compare intersections and crossings that I'm trying to wrap my head around, there seems to be a lot of emotion around children, of course, crossing. And we've got crossing guards and lots of safety things in place for children. But I think for the seniors who have mobility devices, often confused, poor vision, poor hearing, slow to mobilize, I think that they're getting the short end of this stick somewhat. So recognizing that people are aging, that we're going to need it, and I, like other crossings, don't want to wait for something horrible to happen, but I foresee this happening sooner than I foresee children getting hurt in Hillsdale. So if we support that, I recommend that we support this too. Thank you.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to go back to the question that Councillor Ma Chapman posed, and with all due respect to members of council, I would ask that maybe that question be directed to our Director of Public Works, who might be a little more technical in responding to whether or not traffic would be backed up or not. So I would ask that maybe our Director of Public Works have an opportunity to speak to that.
Thank you. Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to council. I could probably just reiterate what Councillor Cabral said. It's, as a PXO, it would be probably 30 seconds to a minute to allow them to cross, and then it would change again. I guess my concern would be similar to the one in Hillsdale, in that the visibility of it may not be the same as a intersection pedestrian crossing. In addition to that, if I could just add that we did determine where the conduit is. It's just north of George Street. But I just want to clarify that conduit is just simply plastic pipe to feed the wires through. So it's not pre-serviced, it's not pre-wired. There's plastic pipe that exists about 1 meter underground. That was installed in 2015, so we're also assuming that that plastic is still in one piece and not broken.
Okay, let's proceed with the recorded vote then. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Moore was speaking about. I was at a funeral yesterday, and I had several seniors approach me that live in the condo development there behind that's talked about, and Councillor Moore hit it right on the nail. Mobility, sight, and I heard all that yesterday. And you know, Mayor Allen, we heard this loud and clear from the people in Hillsdale at the crosswalk there. Now, they're not seniors and they're young people. Regardless, there's people walking and lives are at stake, and we're responsible for that because we live in a sue happy society. First thing people ask, who's your legal counsel? So we need to take serious consideration, and I support this. Thank you.
Okay, proceed with the vote, please.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Cabral. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral,
I'm sorry, would you read the motion?
that council approve a PXO crosswalk at Yonge Street North and George Street, and that this project be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2020 budget.
Yes.
Councillor Chapman,
Yes.
Councillor Moore,
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin,
Yes.
and Mayor Allen.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Councillor Ritchie?
I'd just like to somebody asked, is the traffic backed up? It's backed up now because there's just more traffic. But at least when the traffic's stopped, you got a chance to walk. And stopping is the whole thing behind this. Distracted driving is the big thing. So to get them to slow down, and in the mornings, I'm in the office, and I'll be watching the kids go up to this thing, and they stop. This is to cross 27 from John Street, cross Yonge. The United Church is now Howden. They're on their way to the public school. And they follow along there. The traffic stops. They move across. Runs very smoothly. We need to do the same thing for the seniors.
Okay, next, Councillor Ritchie has put forward a capital-related motion. So before we move on to operations, there's a motion moved by Councillor Ritchie. Be it resolved that Floss Road 6 West from Crossland Road to Vigo Road, 3.13 kilometers, be converted from gravel to hardtop, and that the project be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Moore? Okay, Councillor Ritchie, I'll give you a chance to introduce this, please.
Mayor Allen, hindsight's 2020. And you know, when I first looked at this, I had my mind set on the back half of Floss Road 6 from Vigo Road to Atkinson Road. And I thought of Vigo Road, and I knew it was upgraded, and it was a number of years ago. But when we look at the flow of traffic coming out of the beach, the flow of traffic for these quarries are coming from off Atkinson Road, from Park Place at the beach, and they come all the way up the 6. They cross Vigo Road to County Road 29 to get to the quarries and to go on. And a lot of this traffic's all to the south. So to fix that up, and I asked the Director of Public Works earlier, would there be a savings if we did the whole thing at once? And I'll let the Director of Public Works mention that. We did do a lift of gravel there a few years ago between Crosland Road and Vigo Road, and it was because of the truck traffic beating it up. So I think there'd be some savings there as well too. We might not have to add as much gravel, but it'd be one stretch that'd be done and over with, and we won't be coming back and revisiting this next year. And I can assure you we will be, but it would be done, and it'd be well worth the money spent. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go to CAO Schmidt and then Director Coleman, please, with respect to comment on this, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'll defer comments to our Director of Public Works. However, with that said, excuse me, must be still too early in the morning for me maybe. With the Elmville crosswalk, in the motion, did it specify a funding source?
It did not. It did not.
So I guess from the staff's perspective, we would need to consider where the funds are going to come from. I assume without that, it's coming from taxation. So if that's what council is supportive of, then that's where it would
Most
come from.
logically, what your recommendation would be from there?
Right now, the default I have is as taxation, unless council wants to consider it. And I know Councillor Cabral and I spoke briefly about the potential for it to be considered under the modernization funds. That could be another opportunity that council could choose if they wish to, but if not, then the default would be property taxes.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And at the time of the vote, it was my understanding that it was property taxes. So if this is going to be reconsidered from the modernization fund, then I would need to reconsider the vote, because I think there's a lot of other great initiatives that have been listed through the modernization fund that this would take away from.
Okay, the clerk tells me you have to deal with the motion that's on the table, and then we'll circle back to that one. So we're dealing with the motion that's on the table now, Floss Road 6 West. Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So in terms of savings, there would be a possible savings in unit price. Typically, when you go out for tender with higher quantities, you get a lower unit price. It would still cost you to do the road, but you may get a savings of a dollar or two a square meter, but it's hard to say.
And in an email that was circulated last night to council with respect to this topic, I recall seeing an estimate of this $200,000. Is that still for this added portion of the road? Is that still a ballpark number, given that potential saving?
No, that wouldn't, you wouldn't do the whole road for the same amount of money.
You say the whole increased portion that Councillor Ritchie is proposing?
So the increased portion is about the same length, so a good ballpark number would be 200,000. That's what I would use for an estimate, and with hope we would realize savings when we go out for tender, and it wouldn't be 400,000, it might be 380,000.
Okay. All right, further discussion? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And hi. I'm having a lot of difficulty, again, with adding projects like this. I'm very disappointed in myself at our last meeting. I typically look to professionals, I look to studies, I look to information, and to me, we're adding, and with all due respect to Councillor Ritchie and Cabral, we have roads need studies, and while I think it's great that you take the initiative to go out and determine what roads need to be done, we have a study that comes forward, we have staff, we have professionals that draft it for us, and again, we basically just take everything out that was said to be done and just continually add what our opinion is without seeking the actual information for it. I don't think, no, I can't support any more of adding to roads that need to be done, and that there may be a cost savings, but arguably this road was not identified as a priority within the municipality, and until our council has an opportunity to sit down and evaluate the roads needs and come up with a plan for all the roads over the next 3 years and moving forward, I think that we need to take a look at the big picture and not just one-off areas that we travel.
Thank you. The Floss Road 6, CAO Schmidt, can you remind us where the existing Floss Road 6 West that we approved the other night, or pushed forward the other night to budget finalization, would be coming from a funds perspective, and where this $200,000 could potentially come from as well? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as noted on the slide here, staff is proposing that the original, the original Floss Road 6 West Vigo to Atkinson, which was approved at the December 9th meeting, would be funded from gas tax 100%. If council, excuse me, if council chooses to move forward with this portion of Floss Road 6, sorry, essentially the recommendation is that we could use a combination of gas tax, roughly about $88,000, which is the savings that was remaining from decisions made last council meeting, and then the remaining balance would come from debt, so about just under $112,000 in debt. So on the debt piece too, though, this isn't adding to the overall debt position of the township. Essentially, the decisions that were made at the last council meeting, we freed up, or Councillor Ritchie's motion freed up essentially $395,000 that we were proposing in debt. So this would add back, so the 395 would be less $112,000. There's still a reduction in the overall debt that was originally proposed, though. So
you.
those are be our recommendations.
Any other comments from this side? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think it's quite clear what my position has been on the gravel to hardtop conversions and the history on them. I would like to see it move forward, and the reason for that is because I would like actually to see at some point in time council make a determination to recommit in the 10-year capital plan to converting the remaining gravel roads that were originally in the plan, get them back on there. And it's quite true that the consultants didn't provide us with specific recommendations, I guess, to these particular roads. However, it's the residents that are now asking council to look into this. It's the agricultural community that's now asking council to look into this. And I remembered when the 10th went through, a resident on the 10th came up forward and said that he thought he'd never see it before he died. And that struck me as someone who'd been living on the road probably in the neighborhood of 90 years, finally got to see something happen that he'd been waiting that long for. So it may hurt a little bit, but I do support Councillor Ritchie, and I just wanted to say that I do support him for those reasons.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I totally understand about doing this at the same time to save the extra couple dollars that we're going to save, but I do think we should defer to put it in the capital budget. We all have wants. Everyone wants a road. I had residents who wanted roads. I did not put it in this year's budget. So I think we have to look at that way. We have to look at staff who is the experts at the road studies, et cetera, et cetera. Not to say that it's a last minute thing, but I think we should defer this to either next year's budget or put it in the capital 10-year plan. Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. When we say that we are listening to residents and we do want to take a look at a conversion plan, I have no problem looking into it, but I don't feel that the solution to that or the direction of this council, I feel that if that is going to be a priority of this council, we need to then embark on that process and identify which roads throughout the entire municipality, if this council is to choose a conversion strategy, there needs to be a strategy. And putting sections of roads into it that we don't know are a higher priority, I think this was 187 or 167 cars a day. There might be a gravel road somewhere else in the municipality that sees higher volumes of traffic or more agricultural need. So if this council wants to move forward with a conversion plan, we need to set up a plan and not just one-off ideas on, oh, this person asked for it, or I think this road needs to be done, because as Councillor Ma Chapman said, every ward has different needs for their roads. So if this council wants to move forward with a plan for conversion, I can completely support having that discussion and determining if this council supports the direction of past councils and maintains that we have a difficult time maintaining the infrastructure that we do have. We're deferring work on roads to bring them back up to a level. We're not taking care of what we have and we're adding to it. So to me, it's like, if you can't afford your house, don't put an addition on it. So I think that as a community, we want to move forward with a plan to do so. We can put some sort of money in the budget to look into this. But as far as just adding roads to our infrastructure and basically adding to our infrastructure deficit at the same time, I think that we need an actual plan done by people who do this for a living.
Hence the road needs study, which is going to happen in 220. Okay, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just want to go back to a document that was approved by council in 2012 for Grenfell Road to be paved. It was never done, but it was approved by the council of the day. I don't know why it wasn't done, but they've been sitting and waiting now for 7 years for an approved project.
Okay, thank you. All right, I think, Councillor Ritchie?
I just want to reiterate, and I appreciate everybody's opinions, but when we deferred 3 projects, that loosened up, and correct me if my math ain't wrong, or right, $796,000. So since that time, we've taken 200 to do Vigo Road to Atkinson Road. We took 100 to do Grenfell Road, that's 300. So 300, that still left us almost 500 left over. So that's why I was bringing forward. That money's already been set aside as part of the percentage or whatever it is for tax increase. We're just reallocating funds that we thought, as a council, we went and we looked at it, because we're getting the concerns, we're getting the complaints. I appreciate Councillor Moore with Grenville 2012, and this is 2019, 7 years later. That's what we're here for. Like, I mean, we're not raising taxes, we're just moving within the funds that was already set aside to do this. So whether we delay this portion here now, but it'll be back next year because it's a concern. Gravel road and conversion to a hardtop. So, and then we can pick up and address these 3 that we delayed this year and do them for next year, and at least have debate and put them on the table and move forward. So.
Deputy Mayor Cogman?
Thank you. And I guess my understanding of freed up or money freed up is different, because if we free up money that was allocated in the 2020 budget and push it to 2021, we're not freeing up that money. We're not finding, it's not like winning a lottery. It's not found money. We're simply pushing it off. And I agree that there is multiple different plans out there that show our act, and we have an asset management coming forward. We have a roads needs study coming forward. So I think that it would be a good idea for this council to look at a plan and to move forward with what we know our residents want. So take those roads that are identified from 2012 and before, and take the roads that have been identified in 2025, and come up with an actual plan, rather than just putting things in or taking them out or pushing them back the next year, because I don't have the information that says why a road is being forgotten or why a road is being added. I think that there needs to be, and have our council make our decisions for the future of Springwater and our infrastructure, because right now it doesn't feel like there's a plan. It feels like we're catching up on some things that need to be done, adding some things that may or may not be identified as a priority for this year. And I think that we need to look at a bigger picture.
Okay, is this new items? Because I think we're ready for a vote. Is this a new item?
Well, I want to talk about what we're talking about right now.
Are you bringing up a new point with respect to it?
Well, I just want to mention that I lost my train of thought. I'm going to have to pass.
Okay, I think we've discussed this thoroughly. Is this a new point, Councillor Cabral?
Yes, it is, Mayor Allen. One new point regarding this particular topic.
Okay, go ahead.
This particular topic had a project number. The project number used to be 2021-13. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. Councillor Chapman?
I'd like to, thank you, Mayor Allen, amend the motion for this and defer it to either 2021 budget or into the 10-year capital plan.
I think with others, we've been deferring it to 2021 for consideration. So is that what you're proposing?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, yes.
Do you have a seconder for that? Question, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you. The 2021-13, is that the full, is it half, or is that the full portion that we're talking about now?
Councillor Cabral?
According to this, that was Crosland Road to Vigo Road.
Is Director Coleman, can you confirm that?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would have to pull up the 2018 six-year capital plan.
Okay. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm a bit confused. So right now, are we speaking to only Councillor Ritchie's proposal for that one stretch of road?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have the amendment? Do I have a seconder for the motion? Okay, the motion, that the motion before council now be amended as follows. Delete second paragraph and add that this project be deferred for consideration of the 2021 budget. Do I have a seconder? Are you seconding it?
Is it not already, as it's labeled 2021-13, it's already considered in the 2021 budget, so I'm just
No, I
curious.
think, Councillor, that was the previous capital plan he was referring to. It's not in the existing long-range financial plan. Is that correct? That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Are you seconding it?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Okay, all those in favor? 1, 2, 3, it's carried. Thank you. So we're reading the whole thing? Okay, main motion be it resolved that Floss Road 6 West from Crossland Road to Vigo Road be converted from gravel to hard top, and that this project be deferred for consideration of the 2021 budget. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay, we're moving back in the agenda to 7.3, council motions. Okay, so before we do, we have to look at the total 2020 draft capital budget and 10-year budget to conclude the capital portion. So I need a mover and a seconder that the Councillor Moore, Deputy Mayor Coghlan, that the 2020 draft capital budget and 10-year plan be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. All those in favor? Oh, question? Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Yes, sorry, it pertains to the first portion of the 6th.
Go ahead.
Thank you. If we understand that there's a cost savings to be realized and that we're doing half of it in 2020 and 2021, would there be an appetite to put that first portion that was approved to be done this year also in 2021 so that it's all done at the same time?
Is that,
Been voted on.
yes, to do that would be a reconsideration motion. Okay, so I read the motion about the draft capital, 220 capital budget and the 10-year plan. All those in favor? Councillor Ritchie, are you in favor?
What?
Of the motion that we put forward?
Read the motion to me, please.
That the 220 draft capital budget and 10-year capital plan be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2020 budget. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So 7.3 is looking at council motions, the operating budget. And the first one was withdrawn, and that was with respect to the save stations. The next one is moved by Councillor Ritchie, and it is with respect to the train drain cleanout from the westerly boundary of 2653 Floss Road 6 West to Vigo Road, approximately 0.97 kilometers. Be it resolved that Public Works in 220 clean out the train drain from the westerly boundary of 2653 Floss Road 6 West to Vigo Road, with funding to be provided through Public Works Capital Reserve and that the Public Works notify the farmers regarding the disposal of overburden taken from the train drain, and that this project be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. I'll start with Councillor Ritchie. Oh, we need a seconder for that, please. Councillor Cabral. Councillor Ritchie, a comment, and then we'll turn.
Mayor Allen, I've had three farmers approach me about this. Their concerns. They got outlets that's flowing into this. They can't see their outlets, and like I mentioned there earlier about the importance of these municipal drains. And I did reach out to, when they first reached out to me last spring, I reached out to the Public Works Department. It was a wet spring, and I agree. And I reached out again, and it just seemed to get lost in the shuffle. And I understand that. Everybody's busy. But it's been brought to my attention by several farmers again. And that's why we're doing budget. That's why I thought I'd bring it and put it on the table. If the Public Works has the money in their working capital to address this, then fine. But we need to look at this. We need to assess all of them as far as that goes. But for now, with the train drain, they're concerned, especially when you've got winter wheat planted. Normally, as a rule of thumb, these cash croppers, corn, beans, and wheat. So you get the beans off, you plant your wheat. You plant your wheat, gets up, growing out of the ground in the fall. The fall comes, you get a wet fall, and water starts to show up in the field. That's a concern. You got kill out. When you're putting $200 and $300 an acre input cost into these, that's a problem. And that's why it's coming to my attention and I'm hearing about it. So that's why I'm tabling it. I'm putting it on there. And I welcome comments. And just one other thing, too. Some of the farmers mentioned to me, and I want to share with the Director of Public Works, that is, if there's areas where we can just put it in the field and just level it down, that's fine. So we don't have to worry about trucking it away or anything like that. They'll just level it down. So we might just need the machine with the ditching bucket and maybe the dozer to kind of smoothen it off, and we're good. And get that down to Vigo Road and then see where it goes and see where this assessment, hopefully when it comes back. Thank you.
Okay, I'll turn it to CAO Schmidt and Director Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So, no concerns with obviously adding this to the budget in that regards and assisting our agricultural community. The one concern I do have is with the second paragraph of the motion where it states, with funding to be provided through the Public Works Working Capital Reserve. I do have a concern with that, and I believe we may be speaking about the Swaley Drain later on today, and it will be a somewhat similar situation where the Drainage Act does specifically state that benefiting landowners are to pay for their portion of the construction or the maintenance of these drains. So that motion there, I don't agree with, that it should be funded 100% from the Public Works Working Capital Reserve. My understanding in discussions with our Director of Public Works, the work would be approximately $5,000, of which the township's portion would be $1,350. So $3,650 would be a portion to the landowners. So that I could get on board with, if you will. But I think when we talk about the Swaley Drain, we're going to have a similar conversation about the construction costs and the maintenance costs, and those costs do have to be a portion or should be a portion to the landowners. And I don't think that we should be setting a precedent whereby we're going to go out and clean these municipal drains and the township's going to pay 100% for them, because I believe the discussion we had last meeting, or one of the meetings, was that we have 20 plus municipal drains. The other issue is there's many private property drains that drain into these municipal drains. And what are we going to do with those? We're going to start paying for those too? So I throw that out there.
Okay, Director Coleman, anything to add before I circle back?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So obviously the costing's been provided to CAO Schmidt. In addition to that, there was a comment about the overburden. That's also spelled out in that drain agreement and the Drainage Act. Typically, it's cast on one side or the other. From there, the farmers can move it around if they want it for their property elsewhere, they can take it from there and move it.
So let me clarify, would this be a normal operating process then in the next year? Or why do we need to specifically have a motion with respect to this if it's going to be taken care of with the usual formula for cost sharing? CAO Schmidt?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, so what council doesn't see is in the Public Works operating budget, we do have a number of drains that we actually provide costs for or expenditures for, which are essentially offset by funding from the benefiting landowners. This particular drain has not been identified as a project in 2020, and hence why I would think that this, if council wants this to happen, it should be specifically identified through this process and provide the funding be provided through this discussion. So we don't have this 5,000 set aside for the train drain. We do have other money set aside for other drains, but not for this one.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To the CAO, I don't know the history on the Swaley drain or the train drain. Is that the same thing?
No.
Okay.
Separate.
So I also don't fully understand when we talk about drains in an agricultural setting versus drains on a street, which I call, I'm assuming it's all runoff, but the agricultural drains are getting clogged up. Is this what is this what I'm hearing? So they're getting clogged up like a street drain would too, with leaves or whatever, that the municipality would be responsible for. So I'm not quite clear on why we're not responsible for these drains. Sorry.
CAO, maybe give us some history here.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And actually, Councillor Ritchie nailed it on the head with his, I believe there will be a notice of motion was provided at the last meeting to have staff come back in 2020 with an assessment on our drains and to provide an update to members of council. So I'm not a drainage expert by any means, but I know a little bit, but not a lot. So my understanding is again, so there's a municipal drain, and so we're responsible for those municipal drains. But because through the Drainage Act, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Coleman, those municipal drains, they are, the maintenance of those are through the Drainage Act, or provided for through the Drainage Act. The Drainage Act does specifically state that any landowners that are draining into that municipal drain are required to pay their portion of the costs to maintain that drain. They're benefiting from being outletting to that drain. So there is an assessment schedule attached to each municipal drain, and depending on how that assessment schedule is determined, all benefiting landowners on that drain are a certain portion of the cost. The township being one of them, we're a benefiting landowner, but we're not the only benefiting landowner. There's other farmers, if you will, that drain into that municipal drain, and hence they're required to pay some of the costs.
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Again, though, if I live on a street with lots of sewers, I'm a benefiting landowner because that water's not backing up into my basement. So I don't really see the difference. And those homeowners are not providing additional fees for that runoff to go down the street. So why are the farmers?
CEO? Or
Tackle
Director
that one?
Coleman? Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Moore, and we can certainly come back next year with a little more of a, similar to what Director Ippolito has done, as sort of a question and answer and spell it out. But the the Drainage Act enacted many, many years ago, I believe it's the oldest act in Ontario, spells out how that works and how a municipal drain works. So that takes care of that portion. Now, having said that, there has been a lot of discussion amongst municipalities that a stormwater management pond should also be considered a municipal drain, and that everybody upstream from that stormwater management pond should be responsible for it as well. And that's something that's very contentious to bring forward. The Drainage Act is done and over with, and it spells that out. If the municipality felt that they wanted to move forward with what you're suggesting, which I would be totally on board with, if we were to go and clean out a ditch, or we were to go and clean out a municipal stormwater management pond, we would do the same assessment schedule, and everybody upstream would have to pay for that. Right now, most municipalities, with the exception of 2 or 3, just do that in taxes and just do that under their normal operating budget. But you are 100% correct in what you're saying. Why am I not responsible when they are? And that's, unfortunately, that's just the act was enacted that way. And like I said, some municipalities are starting to jump on board and saying, yeah, we can't afford to maintain all these stormwater assets, and everybody should be responsible, because it does drain private property as well as roads. Does that help? Okay.
Councillor Ritchie, are you willing to amend the proposal then to have this out of operating funds rather than the public works working capital reserve?
Short answer, yes. I wasn't sure how to, my apologies, but I guess I should have went and asked first, but I just wanted to get it on the table. I'd like to see this move forward, get it, whatever process we need to take. C.O. Schmidt, if it's through the Drainage Act, everybody's apportioned, the water's flowing, farmers are happy, I'm happy.
Okay.
So to answer your question, yes.
Okay, are we ready to vote on this then as it's adjusted? It'll be including in the operating. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Next is pertaining to the funding Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Association, FOTSA it's called, and it was with respect to $5,000 to assist in the anticipated legal costs of the Federation, further to the presentation that we had. It's moved by Councillor Cabral. Do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Moore. Discussions on this. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. As you recall, Judith Grant did make a presentation to us with respect to the aggregate pit. They're expanding into French's Hill and utilizing, I don't know how many liters of water per day to wash gravel. They are taking it upon themselves at an LPAT hearing to be represented to try and prevent it from moving forward. And her presentation focused on seeking some financial aid from Springwater. I'm in the north end at Ward 1. I've got signs up on residents' front lawns now indicating that they're trying to save the water. We all drink from that aquifer, and we also know that the Water Observatory is just on 27 there. As a matter of fact, members of council had an opportunity to go there, and my understanding is that's the purest water in the world. So that's why I've put forward this motion. To be quite honest, I know it's unusual, seeing as other municipalities maybe haven't jumped onto it, but once again, as I'm in the north end, I've put it forward based on the residents and what I'm viewing in Ward 1, the Elmvale area.
Other comments? Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Councillor Cabral, in theory, I support the request, but I'm a bit concerned that it assumes we have a position. And because of that, I'm not convinced I'd want to vote for it, George, because I think that it would put the township in a position to say that we are on one side of the fence or the other.
Other comment, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and further to Councillor Moore's points, which I echo. Also, I think that it sets a precedent. We do have many groups within our municipality that are working diligently to preserve, whether it's a forest or water. Often groups are, I don't like saying special interest groups because sometimes there's a connotation, but this is a group with a special interest. And in order to fund their legal fees, while I agree with Councillor Cabral that we need to do something in order to preserve or at least identify the water that is there, I think that there are other avenues that our council could potentially take. But I do agree that this, to me, is offering ourselves into litigation that we don't need to be involved in, and at a time where we are looking to remove ourselves from any litigation that's not demanded of us. I can't support this because I do think it also sets a precedent that we, in my opinion, should not become involved in.
Are there any other new comments? Councillor Ritchie?
Maybe, where does Tiny Township stand on this? What are they putting towards this?
Does anybody have that answer? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and while I don't have anything specific, the same delegation was put forward to Tiny Township. I reached out to both the mayor and deputy mayor and asked if they received any further information, whether it be legal advice or whichever. There was no advice given to the council because the council did not seek advice. They simply accepted or received the delegation with no action.
Okay. If there are no further comments, do you want me to read the full motion, or do we understand? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. Next motion pertains to council reimbursement for mileage. And we have a mover, Councillor Chapman, and a seconder, Councillor Moore. I will read it. Whereas members of council are able to claim mileage for attendance at special meetings, township events, and events attended in their official capacity, and whereas members of council are unable to claim mileage for attendance at regular council and committee meetings, be it therefore resolved that council hereby authorize and direct as follows, that the members of council being reimbursed for mileage incurred for travel to meetings of committees of council. Mileage to regular meetings of council will not be reimbursed. That costs associated be included for consideration in the draft 220 budget, and that staff be directed to draft a council expense policy encompassing all current practices for consideration. Before I go to Director CAO Schmidt, any comment further to this at the table? CAO Schmidt.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So, if council considers this, that's fine. I guess from a cost perspective, to give council some understanding of the numbers. So, in the 2020 budget, we did budget roughly $9,000 for mileage or travel for members of council. In previous years, the mileage has come in around $12,000, $13,000. And so in previous years, councillors were submitting requests for reimbursement for special meetings, CRA meetings, if you will, Community Recreation Association meetings. So with that said, though, when we did the council compensation or reviewed council compensation back in 2018, there was a discussion at that time about mileage in tandem with a number of different conversations. But we were talking about the 1/3 tax-free allowance, which was essentially gone as of 2019, thanks to our friends at a higher level of government. So, at any rate, the idea was to trying to keep the impact of that to a minimum. The proposal at the time was to only reimburse council members based on the policy today. If council was to consider this, I would suggest maybe a $3,000 or $4,000 increase to the budget for 2020 to try to compensate for this.
Okay, are we ready to vote then on this? Councillor Cabral, you have a comment?
I just want a clear understanding, if I'm hearing the motion right. Regular council meetings would still be, like the regular council meetings we come here for would still be treated in the same fashion they are, or they would still be exempt?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll go to vote then. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, we have a noise attenuation motion with respect to the Midhurst Pavilion. That's moved by Councillor Moore. We need a seconder. Councillor Cabral. In this motion, that in order to mitigate noise at the Midhurst Pavilion, council hereby directs staff to install foam or spray foam at each end of the boards at an approximate cost of $1,000. That should the lower cost option not suffice, then an earth berm with plantings, possible cedar trees, be constructed at an approximate cost of $5,000, and that the associated cost be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2020 budget. I'm going to turn to Manager Anderson to update us with any information with respect to this proposed motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to council. In regards to this, I guess, noise resolution, I would not recommend the spray foam just for the simple fact that there's going to be kids picking away at it, animals eating at it. It'll be an eyesore. So the other issue with it being is pucks that are hitting the boards or balls coming off pickleball paddles. Noise travels above a board system throughout the forest. There is a dense forest there throughout the summer months. So my recommendation would be to not do the berm and just do a planting of cedars approximately 150 feet down. I think we need approximately 50 cedar trees in there at 6 feet high. So the cost of that would be $5,000.
Okay, discussion? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I understand it from Councillor Hannah's perspective. He sounds like he's talking a spray foam. I'm wondering maybe along the lines of acoustic tile, would that be an option on the exterior of the boards? Maybe you can get it in the same color as the boards, and maybe it could be covered over with something that wouldn't allow the picking to happen.
I think Manager Anderson, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. There's many different options. I've looked into it on acoustic panel. We looked into fencing. Obviously, that's not what you're asking, and there's an expense to that. In regards to paneling on the boards, I agree. More of a better looking cosmetic system in place would be a route to go. But again, speaking on the noise that travels, it's not just the pucks that are hitting the boards. We have this in different areas. In Minising, we have it. Residents that live very close to that building. We haven't had complaints there ever, as far as I'm concerned. I've had experience at other townships with outdoor rinks, and again, never had an issue with it. So my concern is spending money, putting acoustic tiles on the board systems. In my professional opinion, I do not recommend it, and I think, again, a solution to this would be to put cedar hedges in.
Follow up?
Thank you. With respect to the hedges, have we got other locations where we've installed the hedges and they've been successful at mitigating the sound? I mean, that's the key here, is trying to stop the sound from carrying over. So if the hedges work, I mean, that's great. I just want to know if we've been successful in other locations utilizing foliage.
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. In the rink situation, no. Other park locations, yes, we've planted hedges, walkways, and so on and so forth. So there's neighboring residents to a lot of our walkways, and that's common practice to plant hedges in, just for visibility and to dampen noise and stuff like that. So the answer to your question is it does dampen noise. And speaking with the professionals in the industry, obviously they do recommend it as well. Is it going to stop the noise overall? No, it's not. It's just going to dampen the noise.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. To Manager Anderson. We had, or I had an opportunity when I was sitting on the Committee of Adjustments that we looked at a plan, a small cable company that was beside a house, and they were instructed at the time to build a berm with greenery to mitigate the noise for the homeowners. And it seemed to work really well for them. So I'm wondering what the recommendation to not do the berm is, what the rationale for that is. And secondly, I get the cedar hedges are green all year. I think they look nice, but I'm not sure of the research that says they would mitigate the sound. So I am actually in favor of the berm, so I'm interested to know why you said no.
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Moore. There is issues with the berm in that location. We cannot put it on the actual turf area because there's not enough area for drainage and stuff for the pavilion. So therefore, we'll have backing up of water onto the pavilion. And then there is the issue to go into, well, there was the recommendation to go back into the forest. Well, we have to clear cut trees in order to provide a berm in the forest area. So to me, it really doesn't make sense to take down mature trees in that area just to put a berm and more trees back in.
Just for clarification, have we had numerous complaints with respect to this, or what's been the degree of complaining? CAO Schmidt and then Manager Anderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I've received correspondence from Councillor Hanna regarding this matter. One individual that I'm aware of. I have not received any other complaints that I'm aware of. Whether or not other staff have received complaints, I will let them speak to that, but it's one individual that I've heard from.
Manager Anderson shaking his head. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you. My comment was going to be as to the nature of the complaints. Also, just to me, we have a lot of pavilions and a lot of outdoor playing spaces, such as Doran Park. I mean, we dealt with issues years ago about lights at Doran Park and shining and whatnot. And while I understand that foaming boards might alleviate the noise from the pucks, I think the point of, we do have noise bylaws, so if it is carrying on past a certain hour, that can be addressed through that. But I think that, I mean, I often hear well away from the Ant Mills rink noise, and it's laughter, and it's the point of recreation facilities. So if this pavilion is being a nuisance to the community at whole, I can understand mitigating that so that it does fit into the community well. But as far as doing berming or anything of that nature, if it's not addressed through the community, I mean, we have people, individuals complaining about things all the time, and we don't necessarily react. If it's not a nuisance to the entire community or to a few people in the community, I think that we should maybe look through the CRA or find a different solution, because I'm not seeing one that's going to mitigate noise. Because if we put foam on boards, you're still going to hear people talking and laughing or yelling or whatever it might be. I don't foresee putting a berm in or taking down natural or mature trees.
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. First of all, do not support this. I live closer to the Minisink Pavilion than the Midhurst complaint here or brought forward. Yeah, I hear pucks, I hear noises, but it's through the daytime. The lights are shut off at 10. It is an outdoor rink. That's what you're going to hear. Even if you put it at the end, they're going to hit the sides. You're going to hear them talk over the boards, like Manager Anderson said. To me, I don't agree to spend any sort of money. I have a bush between the Minisink Pavilion and us, but through the winter it's see-through, so basically there's nothing other than the summer. There is the bush there, but to me, I don't even think the cedar hedge might alleviate some of the noise, but that will still carry over depending on how tall they are. So unfortunately, I'm not supportive of this motion.
Okay, I would point out, I think the one complaint that we did receive, it's just as you go around the corner, there's a fence up there in their backyard. The part that faces the rink, there are no windows, it's a brick wall. So they have some attenuation with respect to that property that exists in their own residence, but I just point that out. Pardon me? Okay. So I believe Councillor Moore has amended this. Okay, I'll let you work with her on that. Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I am going to assume for Councillor Hanna that he would not be opposed to maybe sending this back to a staff and requesting a staff report on what options there would be for sound, and for, you know, solving this issue, berm versus cedar trees versus foam spray, or more. Excuse me, so I will change the motion to reflect that, if folks would support that.
Okay, Councillor Cabral, as a seconder? Go ahead.
Actually, this is directed to C.A. Schmidt, but I could be mistaken, but was there not something in the asks, maybe one of the other ones that was specific to the boards at that pavilion? Could you just elaborate on that, please, C.A. Schmidt?
CEO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Councilor Cabral. So yes, there was a potential item under the modernization funds whereby, to Manager Anderson's comments, we have looked at potentially an attenuation wall fence, which was in the magnitude of around $30,000 to $35,000. So pretty big ask. So with that said, though, I just wanted to also elaborate a little bit on some of the dialogue that's happened regarding this particular matter. So Councillor Hanna, myself, the mayor, and Manager Anderson were at the facility back a while ago talking about a couple different options. You know, we did consider the berm, but as Manager Anderson indicated, there's not enough ground space, if you will, between the pavilion and the forest to actually put a berm and have proper drainage, because there are the eaves troughs, if you will, from the roof of the Midhurst Pavilion that actually would actually impede that berm. So drainage would be a potential issue there. We did talk about putting a berm in the forest, but as Manager Anderson indicated, well, it kind of defeats the purpose of cutting trees down only to plant more trees. So we did talk about the noise attenuation wall. We talked about spray foam. We talked about other items, other panels of foaming, if you will, on the ends. But as Councillor Mochaman indicated, it's not just the ends; it's on the sideboards as well. So you essentially have to do the whole facility, if you will. We talked about, you know, is there an opportunity to put some kind of a drop wall on that one side? Sure, but expensive. So again, the individual has emailed me and Councillor Hanna on these things. He would like to see something done. You know, as Manager Anderson indicated, we could try putting in the cedar trees. Yes, it is a cost of approximately $5,000. Is it going to work? I don't know. I really don't know. But the berm, yeah, we have dirt there. We could move dirt, but it's not going to work. We're going to have a drainage problem there, and the water's going to drain back onto the surface of the pavilion, and then we have a whole different issue that we're going to have to deal with. So it's not that we're not trying to deal with this. I think, you know, the idea here is we could try to cedar trees, but if council doesn't want to do that, then you know, those are the options that we've explored to date. So.
Okay, so I believe the amended motion would read something like this, subject to the mover and seconder, that the order to mitigate noise at the Midhurst Pavilion, council hereby directs staff to report on possible noise attenuation options. Is that okay? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Next we move to the rumble strips on St. Vincent Street that was moved by Councillor Cabral. Is there a seconder on that? Putting your hand up, Councillor. Okay, seconder on that, Councillor Ritchie. This pertains to a curve at the south end of St. Vincent Street, that it be equipped with rumble strips, reflectors, and warning signs, and that the funding in the amount of $3,000 be included in the final draft budget, 220 budget with respect to this. Director Coleman, can you elucidate on this, please?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to council. Staff are in favor of this. My concern is that $3,000 is probably not enough for this request. I would say it would be more in the order of $5,000 to $10,000. Having said that, if council wishes to approve the $3,000, we can explore what we can do with $3,000 and then either come back with a request for a change or maybe add more to 2021. So other than that, staff's in favor, and I'll just leave it with you to decide which way you'd like to go.
Is this for safety of cyclists as they use the road, or what?
No,
can you explain a little bit more?
Yep,
about
sure. Councillor Hanna's concern is that unfortunately, due to driver error, We do get a fair number of cars in the ditch in that area. We do have warning signs out indicating that there's a sharp curve. We do have a posted recommended speed for using that curve, but unfortunately, there are drivers who take their chances, I guess, and see how fast they can get around the curves and don't make it. So we do have a fair number of people go in the ditch there, mostly in dry weather.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies because I didn't have an opportunity to speak to our Director Coleman on this. Director Coleman, can you explain exactly what the 5-10,000 would do? Is it, because Councillor Hannan, discussion I've had with Councillor Hannan was essentially it would be us scraping the pavement, if you will, and creating strips that way, similar to what I guess I would imagine on Seaton, I guess, there's that portion. So is that what you're proposing with the 5 to 10, or is there something else that's being proposed? Sorry.
Yep, no problem. That's exactly the best description is if you're traveling eastbound on Seaton Road coming to the stop sign at Wilson, there's rumble strips that kind of grab your attention to notify you. Obviously, there's a stop sign ahead. So in this case, it would kind of catch your attention that the curves are ahead. We've reached out for prices. It's basically a pay by the hour kind of thing. And then his reflectors, we had talked about, I guess for lack of better terms, cat's eyes on the yellow and white lines, or maybe possibly just the yellow lines. I kind of forget what he was asking there. They would be recessed into the pavement, so obviously in the summer they would reflect your headlights to show you the curve. In most cases in the winter they'd be covered with snow. And then warning signs, I'm not sure that we can do much else with warning signs. We could get a costing on a flashing light, but that would be significantly more than the $5,000 to $10,000.
Okay, any other comments then, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Even prior to my retirement, I would come home that way from work in Barrie, and often, I wouldn't say every single week, but enough that is a situation there where people, when they hit that S-bend, they do drive right into the ditch. I know from past experience in the wintertime, that particular stretch, because of the trees and that in the area, also suffers from ice over conditions and black ice at times. So whatever we could do there would certainly, excuse me, certainly be an enhancement for driver safety. We all know it's them going too fast, but I think rumble strips would certainly be good. With respect to the cat size, I'm wondering if Director Coleman might be able to provide some information. I have seen reflective material that adheres to the surface. It's almost, I wouldn't say a fabric. Sometimes it's put up at construction zones temporarily, and you can drive over them. They just kind of flip down. It's more of a fabric that's stuck to the surface of the roadway. I don't know if that's a potential option. Might be more economical than cat size, that's all.
Any comment on that, Director Coleman, before we go to vote?
Thank you, Marilyn. I would have, maybe we could chat a bit further about what fabric and where you've seen it so I can look into it, but I don't have any information on that at the time.
Okay, so Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a comment. There's an S-bend on County Road 29. Do we have anything there, even though I drive it every week? I can't remember.
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Marilyn. Through you to Councillor Ma Chapman. That's a county road, so that would be under the jurisdiction of the county. Sorry.
Okay, so the motion's been adjusted to say, and that funding up to $10,000 be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. All those in favor? Carried. Next, there is the added motion by Councillor Ritchie with respect to the Swaley Drain. To get that on the floor, do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Coughlin. That motion be it resolved that Council provide funding gas tax towards all studies and engineering studies on the Swaley Drain project, and that this funding be included for consideration in the final draft of the 220 budget. Are there any new comments with respect to this? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to CEO Schmidt. Is there a preferred funding model from, or area from staff? To me, I don't know if gas tax is the most appropriate. Is there a recommendation?
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. So you may have seen my email or not last night. So as I was stating earlier, there was just under $63,000 in savings from the Floss Road 10 East project, which was taxation. And so I guess staff's position would be is that those funds be reallocated to the $63,000 required for Swaley Drain, and then the small amount of $260 would be topped up from the drainage reserve if need be.
So this would be adjusting the amount the township pays to pay for all of the studies and engineering studies, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, essentially my understanding, and Councillor Ritchie can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that Councillor Ritchie was considering that all of the environmental study, the reports, the engineering fees and such would all be paid for by the township. However, the construction costs and or the maintenance costs to improve the drain, those costs would be apportioned to the benefiting landowners, the township being one of them. So we would be taking on some of those dollars, but there would be approximately $37,000 that would be apportioned out to the landowners just for the construction costs, though.
We had discussed going to the MVCA for some of this cost. How would that fit into this scenario?
Good luck.
You don't like us right now.
I guess to be honest with you, we have to deal with the NVCA motion shortly, and I'm not sure where that's going to go. But definitely we could have a discussion with the NVCA. I think based on the email response that I provided the council regarding the two requests coming from their November 25th presentation, I'm not a magician, if you will, but I would speculate that they're going to say no.
Okay, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Could you just explain to me then, CAO Schmidt, how many landowners are we talking about, and how much of a burden is this going to be for those farmers? They have a big bill coming or a little bill coming?
Just before you do, this would lessen the burden, but go ahead and answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Moore. So I don't have the assessment schedule in front of me, and I think that's something that will be coming forward in 2020 when Mr. Smart comes forward to provide an update to council on the Swaley Drain. So I don't know what that assessment schedule is. However, staff's best guess at this stage would be of the overall project, essentially $37,000 would be shared amongst the many benefiting landowners. I don't know how many of those are. I don't know if Director Coleman has an idea how many landowners there are.
She's shaking her head no. I'll turn
Multiple, I assume. I assume it's not 2 or 3. I assume it's multiple.
to
But
follow on.
Thank you. I would not want to be one of those folks that was surprised with a big bill. So are we informing folks that this is coming their way? Thank you.
CAO Schmidt?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to Councillor Moore. So I believe, I can't recall the date, but there was an open house in the Minising Community Hall back a year or two ago regarding this project. And so benefiting landowners were invited to that, and I believe notices were provided to them. I stand corrected. I believe that's what the case was. So I don't know at that time what was communicated as to what the cost could be. Obviously, with this motion, if this motion was to be approved, as the mayor had mentioned, the cost to them would be substantially reduced from what it may have been if they had to pay for the environmental study and everything else. So, again, how and what those numbers are, it's going to vary depending on the landowners and how they're assessed. So,
Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Could we consider then, when we have that final number, revisiting whether or not they are responsible, or the township might be a bit more responsible. Would there be an opportunity to revisit that once we have all the numbers?
CAO?
Most definitely, I guess at this stage, it's a matter of, you know, I'm not sure when that report is coming, but to your point, Councillor Moore, if it's determined that the costs are less, obviously there'll be less of an impact. My only concern would be is that depending on what that number is, you know, we're not in a position right now where we're seeking additional money to offset those funds, if you will. With that said, though, and to the Deputy Mayor's comments before, is our staff's preference would be to fund this from the savings from the taxation from the other project, and hence only draw a little bit out of the drainage reserve. So with that said, if council agrees to that, there would be over 40 grand in the drainage reserve that we could potentially utilize should you wish to walk that path in the future. So, and or if there's a small portion, I'm sure we could probably find some saving somewhere to help out.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, and just 2 points, one for clarification. The assessment schedule that was brought forward a couple years ago was being reevaluated by Ken Smart, and at that time, he had showed that the catchment extends up to the hospital in Barrie, and that we also learned that, for instance, the Plowright subdivision in Minising was also draining into that, but if an individual property owner's assessment is less than $5, it's assumed by the municipality, we don't bill them for that. So we will have an opportunity to reevaluate the assessment schedule. As for today, in the motion before us, I would like to put forward an amendment that the municipality assumes the cost associated to residents. I do not want to pay the NVCA's portion of the work that has been done to date, whether it's schedules. So we're 76, what percentage are we right now in the assessment schedule? Whatever portion the NVCA would have been responsible for as a benefiting landowner, I would like that to remain their responsibility. I don't want the
So-
municipality to take that over.
So just to be clear, so of the studies and the engineering fees and such, so the 150 that we're proposing, so whatever their portion is, we're gonna charge them back, but we'll take on the remainder of that 150 anyways. Okay.
Yeah, I sort of assumed that by that, because we're trying to get them to take more, not volunteering to take their portion from them. But that's a good point of clarification. Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, the whole purpose behind this exercise, and you hit it right on the nail, and Deputy Mayor Collin, was to get them to take on their responsibility, which should have been in the memorandum of understanding, which is not in the memorandum of understanding. They are the Conservation Authority. They have the experts, and to let this, we've got gas tax money. We can pick this up. We can set it aside, deal with it when the report comes in. This is damn good relations with the farmers to step in there and look after them, and to take that a step further too. If there's a grant from OMAFRA, a 1/3 grant to pick up for the construction on that end, for them to pay, then let it. So if I was a landowner and I had a bill for $3,000 and I get $1,000 back, they're happy, I'm happy. And that's what we're here for. And that's what I'm after here. I think a lot of this needs to earmark the money, move forward. We're doing budget. That's why I'm bringing it forward now. And then when the report comes in, we can hash it all out and go from there. Deputy Mayor Coughlin hit a good thing. You're right. We're not paying for their portion when they should have been doing the whole thing to begin with. Those are my comments.
CEO, the original motion refers to this coming from the gas tax. Are we all on? No. Okay. Can you clarify that, please?
So again, through you, Mr. Mayor, so there was savings of roughly $6,740, $62,740, oh, the presentation not up there now. $62,740 from the Floss Road 10 East project. So the suggestion is that we use those savings, which is just under 63,000, to apportion towards the Swaley Drain.
Okay, so Okay, so we need a seconder for the amendment. Okay, Councillor Chapman, that the motion before council be amended as follows. We add that the township assume the portion of the residents' costs, Okay.
Of all studies.
Well, it's referred to in the preamble of the motion. All those in favor? That's carried, so I'll read the whole motion. Be it resolved that council provide funding towards all studies and engineering studies on the Swaley Drain project, and that this funding be included for the final draft of the 2020 budget, and that the township assume the portion of the residents' costs. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, next we move on to 7.4, but before we do, I'm just going to have a bio break. Okay, we're resuming, and before we turn to Severance Sound, which is 7.4, Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. Before we leave operating, I just wanted to bring forward a motion to reconsider, and I don't know if you want that now or later.
Well, in that we're in operating, yes, it should come forward now.
Okay. I don't know the number of the resolution, but after some more digging, I would like or ask this council to reconsider the position of the Public Works Assistant. Understanding that the majority of our questions relating to roads and work that needs to be done, I feel like that's a vital position within the administration, and understanding that our CAO would receive numerous pressure from every department on how many staff they would like. These are the identified positions as we continue to grow and move forward, and I would like council to reconsider hiring the Public Works Assistant.
Okay, I'll turn it over to, we need a seconder with respect to that, Councillor Chapman. And I'll turn it over to Clerk Chaperon with respect to the reviewing the reconsideration procedure.
Thank you. So as the motion for reconsideration has been put on the table, there's no debate or discussion on the reconsideration itself. Council would vote to either agree to reconsider or vote against it. And then if council votes to reconsider, then the motion that was originally lost back at the November 25th session would be put back on the table, and discussion would be opened back up for debate and consideration again by council. So the motion would read that budget motion regarding the Public Works Assistant lost at the November 25th, 2019 session be reconsidered.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? 1, 2, 3.
It's defeated.
So it's defeated. Okay. Next, we're at 7.4, Severance Sound Environmental Association. So before we get into the motion with respect to that, I'll turn it to CAO Schmidt just to update us with respect to what we've received and the further information that we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as you recall, the Severance Sound Environmental Association was here on November 25th to provide council with their requests for their 2020 budget. And so there was some follow-up that was received from the Severance Sound Environmental Association regarding, I guess, the four key matters, I guess, coming from that meeting. The first one being the source water protection funding. So I believe at that meeting there was discussion that there may be an opportunity whereby the amount of money that they were requesting in their base request for 2020 could be adjusted due to the potential for the province to be funding the source water protection. In the email that we received back on December 3rd, essentially they're stating that there is a possibility, they're about 80% sure, however, it would still have to go back to their board for final approval. And so at this stage, I'm not sure that they're in a position to be able to provide that reduction to the township. So that's the first thing. The second thing was there was a question regarding the potential duplication of services or overlap of services as it relates to the Ontario Clean Water Agency, as it relates specifically to Orr Lake. So we did get a response from our representative, well, it's the same response actually that Aqua provided to both SSCA as well as the township. So I'll just briefly read what they stated. So Aqua is not involved with water quality monitoring of Orr Lake. Aqua is required under the Environmental Compliance Act, I believe, for the Environmental Compliance Approval, for the Elmville wastewater treatment plant to monitor the final effluent discharge to the Wye River, including measuring the flow, various weekly and monitoring sampling, and reporting to the MECP. So essentially, the Aqua is stating that they do not do any water quality monitoring and or any type of monitoring, I guess, as it relates to Orr Lake specifically. So they're stating that there is no duplication of service there. The third item was in regards to the invasive species. So as you're aware, last year, the invasive species was a separate item being requested outside of their base budget. In 2020, they've included it in their base budget, and they're stating here that Springwater's portion is essentially just over $5,000. So that is included in the 81,000 under item 7.4 on the agenda. And then the last item was with regards to sustainable Severn Sound. So that's the second item recommendation under 7.4. And the ask is essentially for $13,764. So there was some information provided to members of council with regards to a draft work plan for that. In staff's opinion, or in my opinion, to be quite honest with you, I'm still grappling with what that would provide to the township. And so my opinion would be it might be a little premature to go forward with that without having further conversation with the SSEA to fully understand what value we'd be getting out of that $13,000. But if council has other opinions, then obviously we would consider those as well. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I need mover and seconder to get the first on the floor, Councillor Cabral and Councillor Ritchie, that the 220 SSEA operating budget request of $81,863 representing Springwater's share be approved and included in the 220 budget. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Pardon?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Are we voting on the $13,000?
No.
Okay, sorry. I got messed up.
Voting what I just read. That the 220 SSEA operating budget request in the amount of $81,683 representing Springwater's share be approved and included in the 220 budget. Comment? Oh. Do you have comment, Councillor, or are you voting? Okay.
Just so you
Okay.
know. That's
All those in favor? Carried. Next, we're moving to the second portion of SSEA. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. That the program change request from Severn Sound Environmental Association for Sustainable Severn Sound in the amount of $13,764 plus HST be approved and included in the 220 budget. Discussion with respect to that. Councillor Cabral.
I just, taken what our CAO has said, it seems to me that it's premature as well, so I'm not supporting it.
Okay, so if this is in the affirmative, so if you vote for it, then it's yes. If you vote against this at this time, it's no. So those in favor of the motion, those opposed, that's defeated. Next, we move on to the NVCA, which is 7.5 in the agenda. And I'll again turn to CAO Schmidt to give us any updates with respect to this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So somewhat similar to my comments on the SSEA, so the MVCA was here on November 25th to provide a presentation to members of council regarding their request for 2020 budget. Two follow-up items were requested of the MVCA. Essentially, the first one had to deal with the duplication of services, if you will, as it relates to the SSEA and the NVCA. And I believe that there was, in the presentation, there was a number of approximately $7,000 indicated that should be coming back, if you will, to the township for those savings. And I believe at the time there was discussion that former administration indicated that it was insignificant and hence the dollars weren't required. I did go back to them stating things have changed, and although it may appear insignificant, we'd still like to have that discussion. They've come back stating they're willing to have the discussion, but until the MOU is updated and and the agreement is in place, essentially the $7,000 isn't coming your way. So that's the first thing. The second thing was with regards to the minister's letter in August of 2019, whereby it directed not to increase levies and or user fees in 2020. Essentially, the response from the MVCA was that was a request from the minister, not a direction, and hence if council wants to choose to not approve the levy for the MVCA in 2020, then there is a process that would likely flow from that based on the Conservation Authority Act. So there would be, she quotes section 27.7 of the Conservation Authority Act regarding the process that we would have to follow in order to appeal their levy. So it's up to council to decide as to whether or not they would wish to appeal it and or accept it and move forward for 2020. So.
The MOU that you refer to, CAO Schmidt, is there specific reference in it to the description and the handling of what is the $7,000 that you referred to? So the overlap of charges, for lack of a better term, is there reference to that? When they say until the MOU's adjusted, that suggests there is wording that needs to be adjusted. Do you recall whether there is wording?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, I'll be honest with you, I haven't had the opportunity to review that MOU in great detail. My understanding is that they've indicated that through their presentation, because not just this year, but multiple years we've been asking the same question, and they've finally come to the table to provide that information. I'm not sure that it's that specific in the document, to be quite honest with you, but I stand to be corrected in that regards. You know, if council wishes staff, I would suggest that if you wish for staff to pursue that you provide us direction to do so, and we will get in touch with the MVCA and we will start that process. Unfortunately, though, I don't believe that they're going to be in a position where they're going to give you that $7,000 for 2020. It might be more for 2021 and on.
But it might be a consideration of
position.
council to consider amending the motion that addresses this to state the position that we would like to have that considered for
2020.
2020. Discussion, Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn. Further to CEO Schmidt's comments.
Sorry, if I may interrupt, we need to get this on the table. So are you moving to get on the table, Deputy Mayor Coghlan? Councillor Moore, sorry, proceed.
Thank you. I'm of the position now, the resolutions approved at this table, which are echoed and supported at the county table, and have been done so numerously throughout our neighbors, most recently Clearview. I think that there needs to be a message sent to all conservation authorities, and specifically ours as the NVCA. The comment made by, I believe it's Ms. Flanagan, when she was sitting here before us, that Minister Urick did not understand how conservation authorities worked or operated at the time of the letter, to me is ludicrous. Also, regardless of whether it was a request or a direction from the minister, in simple terms, if I ask my children, can you please pick up your shoes or go pick up your shoes, the end result is the same. So how the letter was asked, what the request or direction was very specific, in that there is to be no budget increase over last year and that there is to be no new programs offered. I would implore this council to pay a levy that is reflective of a 0% increase over the 2019 budget, and that we potentially could even have the option of withholding our $7,000 in payment until such time that an agreement is reached. They identified the number of duplication finally after 5 years. We still don't have the core mandated determination of the CAs yet, and I think that as we continue to move forward, we need to stay strong in what we've done. Year after year, we can, because of the CA, Conservation Authority Act, we're essentially forced to pay a levy that we as a council have agreed we don't agree with. So I would like to amend the motion this evening that Springwater Council pay a levy that is reflective of a 0% increase over 2019, and that we withhold the identified duplication of service until such time that an MOU can be reached or agreed upon.
Is there a seconder to that amendment? Councillor Moore? Councillor Moore, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just to the CAO, is there any ramification for withholding that $7,000 to $8,000? Are we putting ourselves in some sort of jeopardy if we do that? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Moore, yes, based on the Conservation Act, but I believe, you know, it'll depend on the reaction of the MVCA and whether they want to pursue, how far do they want to push this, I guess, right? So the Conservation Act, and again, I'm not an expert on the Conservation Act, but my understanding is we have an obligation to pay them. But if we don't, what are they going to do? At the end of the day, we could appeal the levy to a tribunal, and in my mind, and again, not an expert in this area, but I assume the tribunal's at the provincial level, and so I'm a little confused, to be quite honest with you, that, well, if the minister is at the provincial level dictating that there should be no increase, then not sure how a tribunal could potentially go against that, but I'm not that familiar with that type of litigation, if you will. So there is a potential there that they would pursue that for $7,900 over last year's. Maybe not. But again, it's up to council to decide what position or what stance you may want to take with respect to this. So.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I know we're just looking at 2020, but I would probably suspect that this particular figure, if I'm hearing correctly, this has been going on for a number of years, probably could be $20,000 to $30,000 if we were to go back and say, you owe us this money too. That be fair comment?
Hale?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't know exactly, but yeah, it probably is in around that range. It's probably at least a 3 or 4 years of backdating, if you will. The numbers, I don't know exactly what the annual would be. If we base it on what they proposed, the just over $7,000, then yeah, it would be in the round of 30 grand or give or take. So, so yeah, I would agree with you on that.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So is that something that council is entertaining, or Deputy Mayor Coghlan, are you entertaining going back 2, 3, 4 years to recoup some of this money?
Deputy Mayor?
While I would love to, I think that this movie, like now, this is the first time our municipality, from what I understand, had agreed that the number was nominal, that it was insignificant. So to me, that was a sort of handshake between the municipality, and as we had been requesting for 5 years from the NVCA what that number was, this is the first time we have a number, something to actually work with. So if we wanted to go back and ask them to find out what that number is, yes, absolutely. I think our residents are entitled to not paying any duplication of service, but it's to our attention now. We have made resolutions at this table to start the process moving forward, and I think that if we move forward and if we can get this message across, if we can start here, I am more than satisfied with the progress this council has made. Okay,
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes, I just want to further comment on and pick up where Councillor Moore mentioned. I support withholding payment, and I'll be very, very frank. If it costed us money to go to a tribunal, then I'd rather spend the money that way. And I think it's time they got the message. But while we go to do that, we need to go around the table over there and find support. Who supports us in our cause for this. And I know we'll find support. And so that numbers matter. So our CEO mentioned it. While we're down there at Queen's Park and we're talking to the minister, we might want to go and round up a few other people that'll hear our cause, like our MP, and see where this goes, because I think this is well worth it, long overdue. Support it.
Okay, it's suggested that we split this into two motions. So the first motion that I read, and then the amended motion moved by Deputy Mayor Coghlan and Councillor Moore, that the township pay a levy reflective of a 0% increase over 2019 to the MVCA, and that the township withhold the identified amount of approximately $7,000 through the MOU. So dealing with the first one, which again I read that the 220 MVCA operating budget requests in the amount of $188,420 O2 representing Springwater's share be approved and included in the 220 budget. If you're voting yea, you're voting for that. If you're voting nay, you're voting against that. Further, first of all, clarification, Clerk Chaperon.
Thank you for clarification. What I would be recommending if council would like to support the, wouldn't be, it would be a motion to vote against the motion that would be on the table, and then Deputy Mayor Coughlin would propose her motion as we have done through the rest of the budget process, just because we're not, procedurally, we shouldn't be doing a direct negative to the motion. So that would be my recommendation. If the Deputy Mayor would still like to go ahead with an amendment, then we can work that out.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, and not to be cheeky, I guess, but if the amendment before council for the 188 is defeated and we're giving them nothing, why would I? To me, it's I don't want to pay anything. Like, I don't want to pay them until this is figured out. So strategically, if council votes not to do that, I mean, I wouldn't deceit council in that way, but I don't understand how, if we put forward a motion just not to pay the NVCA, why we wouldn't just wait and see what the fallout from that is and then move forward after that.
Councillor Moore?
I just need some clarification then. Are we voting to not give them a cent, or are we not giving them an increase over 2019? Sorry.
And through you, Mayor Allen, that's my concern, because if we're voting on the motion not to give them a cent, that's what the motion is. So that's why I was curious about having it amended, because if we're asking us not to pay them at all, we're relying on someone else bringing forward another motion to ask for a different amount. So
Okay.
I'm just kind of curious about.
I think what we might do is then pose this second as an amendment. Okay, so we're just going to alter the first motion. 1 second. Deputy Mayor?
Would it suit council then to have our Director of Finance establish the amount paid in 2019 and just plunk that number in instead?
CEO?
Or CNH?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe, based on the presentation from the NVCA, the amount that the township paid, including the asset management piece, was $191,593.
Can you split it out net of that, because there's a second motion dealing with it?
So the operating levy specifically was $181,993.
Change that, right? Just write it on there. Okay, so that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Remove the 188,420.02 and replace it with 181,993.00 and add, and that the township withhold the identified amount of approximately $7,000 through the MOU. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
And just for clarification's sake, CO Schmidt does have the exact number for that.
Sorry, yeah. So it's $7,258 is what was identified in their presentation.
7258?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Is everybody clear on that? Yes is to vote for this. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, so the main motion that the 220 MVCA operating budget request in the amount of 181,993.00 representing Springwater's share be approved and included in the 220 budget, and that the township withhold the identified amount of $7,258.00 through the MOU. All those in favor? A question before we vote.
Yeah, and just a friendly amendment, and I will be asking for a recorded vote on this, but just as clarification, as this will become circulated to other municipalities, not officially, I'm not asking for that, but could we, where it says in the amount of 181,993, which is reflective of a 0% over 219, just so that when I communicate this to other municipalities, that the message is clear?
0% increase over 219. Okay, so we're adding bracket 0% increase over 219.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody clear on that? Recorded vote.
A recorded vote was requested by Deputy Mayor Coughlin. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Would anybody like the motion reread? That the 2020 NVCA operating budget request in the amount of $181,993, which is reflective of a 0% increase over 2019, representing Springwater's share, be approved and included in the 2020 budget, and that the township withhold the identified amount of $7,258 through the MOU.
Okay, all those in, recorded vote.
Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
Yes.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Yes.
And Mayor Allen.
Yes.
That motion is carried.
Okay, so the second part is the program change. So I need a mover and seconder to get this on the table, please. Councillor Ritchie, Councillor Cabral. That the 220 MVCA asset management levy request in the amount of $11,076.45 representing Springwater's share be approved and included in the 220 budget. Any discussion about that? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you. This is the second portion of a four-phase. So to me, this is not a new initiative, and therefore I don't believe that it does impact the minister's letter. But if council so chooses not to support it, I can agree with council on that. So I just curious if there was discussion amongst council to fully understand this portion of the impactor that is not included in the levy.
This is the final year of the asset management plan that is going to be updated and carried forward or updated in the next year by the board. But this is basically what we agreed to, subject to the number finalization for the final year representing this. CEO Schmidt, can you add to that at all?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm just trying to find actually the differential over last year. So, so it's about just under, it's $1,476 is what we're talking about. So yes, it is the final year of their asset management. So let me back up, sorry. Back 2 or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, they implemented an asset management levy from the MVCA. Obviously, we have a similar levy, and many other municipalities have it as well. Essentially, although we roll ours up within our general taxation levy. So with that in place, we had the opportunity at that time to decide whether we would pay all in the first year and or we would phase it in over a 4-year cycle. We chose the 4-year cycle. This is the last year of that 4-year cycle, so it gets it up to where they need it to be. So it is an additional $1,476 would be required in 20. That would be the impact in 2020 for this.
Okay, Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, just to add to C.O. Schmidt, I remember when this came forward in our second term, and I spoke against it, and I didn't support it, but it got passed. And I think for the last year, give it to them and, let it go, but, and hold tight with the 0% increase. And when it comes time to renew, and you can be sure, and I repeat, you can be sure they'll be back with a second time with more money. We can nail them then. But I shouldn't talk like that, but anyways, we'll
Okay.
let it go.
All right, everybody understand the motion? All those in favor? That is carried.
He's trying to poke it back.
Okay, next we're moving to 9.2, and we have, although I set a hard stop at 1 o'clock, it's 12:20 now, so we have a bit to cover still. 9.2 is the modernization funds. I'll let C.O. Schmidt start on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we, okay, perfect. So on your screen here, or on the slides here, so with the modernization funding, as most councillors are aware, earlier in 2019, we received a one-time allotment of $676,000 and change. To date, we've essentially spent approximately $48,000 of those funds. On this slide here, it indicates how those funds were spent. So $13,000 towards new scheduling and booking software, and then the remaining balance required for the Hillsdale intersection pedestrian signal of $35,000. So essentially, there's $628,000 remaining to be allocated. So if we switch, I guess I can do that. If we, on this slide here and the next one, there was a number of requests or proposed projects provided by members of council and staff. And essentially, at this time, I guess we could go through each one of them, and or if members of council have an idea as to which ones they might like to utilize these funds for, then I think this is the opportunity to have that discussion. So you will see, based on all of the proposed projects on this slide as well, the next one, we don't have enough funds set aside to do all of these projects. And again, there is no stipulation that we have to spend all of these monies. I did mention that we did apply for the new intake, which likely they will be coming back asking us how we spent it. Again, I'm not sure that we have to totally spend it all, but if we haven't spent any of it, or a good portion of it, the likelihood that we get the intake money might be reduced. So.
Okay, I'll open it up for discussion as to how we want to proceed with this. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I have a lot up there. My first one with the exercise equipment at Harry Adams Park, I would like to, I don't know how you do it, but change it to maybe put it into an IFC instead of on the budget, if that's possible. It's a wish, not really a need, in my opinion.
Okay,
Do you want me to just continue with
yes,
on my
continue,
name?
please.
With the lighting at the Menacing Pavilion, the lighting there, it's been as old as the pavilion, not sure how many years, more than 15 or 17 years. They are starting to go. They take a long time to warm up if they shut off. So with the new LED lighting, I'm hoping that would go forward. Also, I did ask what the cost of the hydro was between the rink house and the pavilion lights. It's about $2,400 a year. So if you times that for how many years, we'll probably have a huge cost savings there. The tables and chairs at the Minnesota Community Center, the tables definitely need to be replaced. They're still okay shape, but they're marked up quite a bit from all the rentals, and the kids' crafts, things like that. So if anyone rents the community hall, it's not very, well presented. Chairs are okay if you need to split them. I'm okay with that. The Aunt Mills chairs and tables, I'm not quite sure what kind of shape they are in. Maybe Manager Anderson can answer that more detailed than me. That was an ask from the CRA in Aunt Mills. Thank you.
Just on the tables and chairs, that seems like a high number. If you do, you know, or the tables and chairs, can you just review, or somebody review the basis of that calculation? How many we're talking about, both in both locations?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. That was an estimate from Manager Anderson. He would probably be able to talk more about that one.
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to council, we purchased most of our tables and chairs from Schoolhouse Products, as they do offer lifetime warranties on a lot of their products. So if any hardware malfunctions, they will send it to us free of charge. They're extremely durable. So if they're dropped or transported to different locations, they do hold up, and they are fairly obviously easy to clean and keep looking good for the public. And the pricing, I guess the budget there is an accurate number, because I did get quotes on that. Speaking on Aunt Mills Community Center, they definitely need new tables and chairs. They are in dire need of replacement, just for the simple fact they're kind of a backyard table and chair system.
CAO Schmidt?
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So further to Manager Anderson's comments, so the numbers, how they came about essentially is for Minnesing, there's approximately 25 tables and 150 chairs estimated in that $16,500. And then the Anton Mills, sorry, that was the Minnesing, sorry. Anton Mills was for $6,800 estimated at 10 tables and 60 chairs is what that's based on.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, to the CAO. If we do get asked what we spent the money on, can you just tell me what the criteria is for this money? There seems to be lots of asks, but there are lots of different departments. So I'd just like to be really clear on what we're approving going forward.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Moore. So it is somewhat open-ended, and it's supposed to be for efficiencies and/or modernization opportunities, service delivery, those types of things, cost reductions. It isn't like some of our other funding whereby, like gas tax, we have to report every year, and it's pretty substantial reporting that we have to report on. And some of these other grants that we get, we typically have to have a reporting mechanism back to the province. This one here, there is no reporting mechanism back, or no formal one anyways. What we've been told is that through like I said, this new intake, there will likely be a question, but no necessarily formal reporting has been provided to us at this stage. So, like I said, it is more open-ended. It's modernization, it's efficiencies, it's trying to improve how we deliver services to the community. So it is, there's a lot of subjectivity to that, I guess. I'm not sure that it's not prescribed like the gas tax where you can only spend it in such ways. This one is pretty open-ended from what my understanding, so.
Okay, can we get just comment on the ones that were proposed by staff, just going through each one and just touching on those, and then we'll discuss?
Sure. I'll try to provide a high level, and then I will direct any other questions to the areas that may have more information on it. So if we start with the digital signboards, so these are essentially, we're looking at 6 different digital signboards to be installed at 6 of our community halls. I believe the one community hall, so we don't have a community hall in Phelpston, I believe. So we have 6 at roughly $40,000 each. The next item is LED lights at the Tree Nursery Sports Park. So as we were constructing the new sports fields, the baseball diamonds here, we were apprised by the contractor that our lights need to be replaced at those ball diamonds. We don't actually have enough of a power source there, I guess, to run all 4 diamonds all at the same time. So there is a bit of a concern there. So instead of actually upgrading the power source, we felt that the LED lights would be a better long-term solution and provide us with additional cost long-term. The next item is the facility assessment, control, and monitoring. So this one here, the idea is that for all of our community halls right now, essentially people have to come and pick up keys, and keys are lost, and keys go wherever, and we're not sure who has keys. The idea here is to actually try to put in some swipe passes, if you will, for some of our patrons, so we can control security, whereby we can issue a card and we can control electronically, if you will, and disengage the access to that building. Also, we're looking at putting security monitoring in our facilities, because some of them do not have security. So that's at a high level, and we can get into that a little bit more if there's further discussion. The next item is the service delivery review. So this is, we had indicated in the staff report when we brought on December 4th, we indicated that if we're not successful with the grant, that we would still like to pursue a service delivery review, and hence we've allocated $50,000 out of the existing modernization funds to do that. Obviously, if we're successful with the intake, the grant, then obviously these dollars would be freed up to do other things, and or depending on what that service delivery is, if there's recommendations coming out of that, we could use some of these monies to implement some of those recommendations. The next item is a high shoulder removal piece of equipment for Public Works. That I would have to defer that to our Director of Public Works for further information on that.
Thank you. So the high shoulder removal equipment that we're looking for here, currently, a lot of you have probably seen it happen. The grader goes along and grades off the high shoulder, which is basically winter sand, some granular material, weeds, grass, whatever debris is there. So they grade that onto the shoulder of the road. It's scooped up with a loader, dumped into the truck, and then the road is swept off. This attachment would basically pull that material forward and chew it up and spread it back down in one pass. So that would eliminate the need for 2 additional pieces of equipment and 3 staff on site. It would just be a 1-unit process.
Actually, while we have Director Coleman, maybe she can speak to the next item, the loader scales as well.
So loader scales, it's basically an onboard scale that's attached to the loader to weigh the material in the bucket. Basically, that would give us a more accurate amount of material that's going onto a truck. Number 1, to make sure that we're not overloaded. Number 2, to track the amount of sand and salt that we use. We do have to report that to the MECP each year, how much we use. Right now, staff have basically a piece of paper and they write down how many loads they use, and we kind of estimate the volume in the loader and then the weight per volume, and basically come up with an estimate of how much we use. This would allow, obviously, more accurate tracking. Would basically be a little quicker, because they would basically push a button and print off the volume rather than counting the buckets and writing it down on a piece of paper. In addition to that, we could use it at when we take the loader to the pit and load granular on our trucks. We would have a more accurate measurement on how much is being used for the various roads.
So the next item is the iPads, tablets, which is kind of phase 2 of our work order management initiative. So you may recall earlier this year there was a request for work order management software and asset management software. So staff are in the process of implementing that software. With this, essentially, phase 2 of that project would be is putting devices, iPads, tablets, phones, whatever the case may be, in the hands of our frontline staff to be able to actually complete work orders electronically as opposed to a paper-based and or coming back to the state to their work yard and having to fill out the information. So I give the example of a couple weeks ago I had an issue with my hot water tank, and the individual came in and diagnosed the problem and had an iPad and essentially was completing the work order right on the iPad. So again, not just from a work order management perspective, but also from an asset management perspective, having staff out in the field working on assets or working on work orders just would make it much more efficient from a township perspective to collect data. We talked about data a number of times through this budget process and maybe the lack thereof. This would definitely assist with us collecting this type of information and hopefully being in a better position long-term to have conversations with council and the public on some of this information. The next item is the human resource management system. So we currently have a financial software system, Microsoft Dynamics GP. This would be an additional module added to that software, and this would assist us in tracking employees more effectively and managing work-related information, performance evaluations, performance management training, online timesheets, and integrated pay. So we do have a lot of obviously our staff are qualified. A lot of them go through various training on an annual basis and are required to do training on an annual basis. A lot of that information is tracked manually right now, so this would help with that. The next item is the tire changer and balancer, and I'll pass that one over to our Director of Public Works so I don't misspeak on this one.
Thank you. Basically, with the, you'll recall, we approved an additional mechanic last year. Right now, the purchase of new tires requires the tire and the new tire and the old tire with the old rim to go out and be changed off the rim. So the staff has recommended that if we purchase a changer and balancer in-house, we would be able to buy the new tires, obviously, and change them off the rim and put the new tire on the rim in-house and balance it in-house instead of sending it out.
So the next item is the animal control software. So similar to the HR, the human resource management system, we do have, this would be an additional module to our Microsoft Dynamics GP system, our financial software. So again, this would be an additional module to track information regarding our animal control area. Enables automatic billings and payments, and it just allows us to better track who has animal tags and who doesn't. It provides for mail merges and such, so that it's easier to provide annual letters back to residents who do have animals and who are required to potentially pay an annual fee for their license or their tag, if you will. So that is an additional item that we're looking at or we've proposed. The next item is the portable PA speaker system. So this is something that I actually encountered myself and somewhat proposed this when we were at the business breakfast and also at Autumn Fest. We tend to lack what I would say a portable PA system or a speaker system that allows people to actually communicate properly with members of the public, especially, this is the face of the township, and when you can barely hear the individual speaking or it's crackling or it's, whatever the case may be, it's just, to me, for $2,500 or give or take, to me, it's something that I think would make the township at these events stand out a little bit better than what we do today. Would make us look maybe a little more professional than what we are today. So that was just kind of my thoughts on that. And I guess the last item, again, I'll defer the WeatherBrain weather stations back to our Director of Public Works.
Thank you. So the WeatherBrain's actually a company, so we'll, I guess, go out to determine who would be the appropriate choice. But basically, through investigations, we've discovered that this is a low-cost road weather station, so what we call RWIS, so Road Weather Information Station. And basically, they're designed to allow staff to monitor road and weather conditions without actually traveling to the site. As you're aware, the township is very geographically large, So we are proposing one more or less in each corner of the township. And this will allow staff to monitor more of the road network when they're unable to get there. Basically, it would monitor the weather, the snow depth, changing weather events. These would, there's a camera on it so that you could view what the road condition is actually like. This would not eliminate staff from patrolling to meet the requirements of the minimum maintenance standards, but it will allow them to make a quicker and more informed decision on where to be and when. We definitely have areas of the township that experience different weather at different times. Sunny right now, but it's probably snowing west of here. So they would have, like I said, camera, precipitation gauge, road surface sensor, so we could determine the temperature of the road. Early on in the year, it's important to know what the temperature of the road is. Obviously, if the road is freezing but it's sunny out and we don't know that, then we can't react appropriately. It would be powered by a solar panel and would have a data collection box so that we would be able to go back and also determine what weather conditions were at certain times. So the capital cost is low, and there is a monthly maintenance fee, which is about $250 a month. That has, I believe, been incorporated into the operating budget.
Thank you. CEO Schmidt, if you go back to page 1, please, of that, or the previous page. So that 7,500 has been included from previous discussion, is that correct?
So
7,500 from the community projector?
that's correct. Councillor Cabral had asked at the December 2nd meeting for that to be considered as part of the modernization fund. So we have added that. That's why it's highlighted in red, because it wasn't originally in the original
Okay.
document that was provided.
Thank you. Open it up to comment. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mary Ellen. We're on the right page here. I just wanted to speak to two in particular right now, if possible. The digital signboards for the community halls. I don't think this particular one should maybe move forward, and the reasoning I'm suggesting that is that the BIA is also looking at a digital sign. It seems that we're kind of overlapping. I'm also wondering whether or not putting them on the community halls themselves is the most appropriate location for visibility for everybody. Like given Elmvale, I'd rather see it at the Gateway Park where everybody would have access to it. So I'd like to see something like that, but I'd like to see it after a report comes back from staff, and maybe more likely in a more of a staged manner where one sign can be put up, we can see how it's working out, and maybe at that time decide whether we have better locations for signs. Maybe we can get by with 4 instead of 5. Or whether or not council decides that they actually want. I'd like to see that one go back to staff for further comment and further review. And with respect to the LED lights at the township park here, based on what CAO Schmidt is suggesting, that replace them, I'm wondering whether or not it might be a little bit more prudent at this stage of the game, rather than replace all of them, if we were to do one of the ball diamonds, in order that the equipment that's there, we can get some life expectancy out of the rest of it and still manage to be able to light up 4 parks, or maybe do 2 of them and still be able to light up the other 2 parks with what's in place now. Because as you said, it sounds more like a power supply issue than anything else. So maybe installing the lights at only one of the ballparks might make it workable with the current power supply, rather than spend all the money to do all of them.
Just on that, there are 4 parks, so the 185 covers 4 parks, is that correct? No?
4 diamonds.
4 diamonds? I mean, that's what I meant, yeah.
So
Okay.
just on that, maybe Manager Anderson can maybe speak to that a little bit better than I can. He obviously had direct communications with the contractor on this, so he's in a better position to explain what this situation is than I am, so.
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to council. In regards to the ball diamond lighting, obviously it was brought to my attention. We looked at the cost to change the service over from the transformers, and it was just not feasible. So that's why we're looking at the replacement of the light heads. I guess Councillor Cabral's recommendation on one diamond. Obviously, that wasn't even a consideration, so I can have that discussion with the electrician to see if we're able to do that. But I think at this point, the lighting system was, recommended to do the two additional ball diamonds. And I think there's going to be an additional cost to getting that contractor or a contractor back here to do both diamonds.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the comments. I have to step back and wonder how the ball diamonds and the lighting got put up in place initially without knowing what kind of power supply would be necessary to operate the lights. But I just, looking at the $185,000 number there and just thinking that they're not that old, like to get some mileage out of what's already there, and if we could do it by installing the LEDs at one in order to make all the ball diamonds serviceable, I'm just suggesting that that might be the best route to take at this particular time. So maybe a report back to staff would be in order, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, other comments? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just with the exercise equipment, I would like to totally remove that off the table, and I will bring it up in the future.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. The LED, the light, the digital signboards, the Community Hall Initiative is something that I'm in full support of. Over 5 years, we have heard from numerous communities, Minising, Midhurst, Elmvale. The community Maple Syrup Festival is also looking to move forward with a digital signboard. I think partnering with groups for this is a good idea. I do remember discussions of control over messaging. So if we weren't to put one up in Elmvale and the Elmvale BIA did, we wouldn't have control over what was being communicated to the residents. So there was a concern about that. But the idea of partnering with them and supporting their messages on our signs, also making sure that they are on township property. I do agree that the locations of the signs need to be considered, and which I would assume would be coming forward in a report, because we would also need a communication policy, I believe, needed to be approved by council prior to the digital signboards going out. So I feel that this is an initiative that is supported throughout all of our CRAs and our communities, and I would like to see this one move forward as a top priority for myself.
Just on that, I know Hillsdale has approached with interest in doing it, and they're willing to do some sort of cost sharing. So maybe we consider earmarking some funds, maybe not the maximum of $240, but an educated guess of what, in some sharing capacity, a dollar amount, and we place mark that for this. Just an idea, but I would be in support of that. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would agree with that process too. I think, and without throwing myself under the bus, the Grenfell Hall will be a big part of the facility review that we're going to do this year. So I think that we would incorporate these signs as part of the facility review, and hope that they recommend whether or not to proceed and at which halls. So earmarking some money would be a good idea if we're really sure, but not all, and or deferring until we have the results of the review. Thank you.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I could say that I could support something like that. I know one of the difficulties at the BIA that I did raise with them, and I can also advise that there was some dialogue at the BIA that they, along with the Maple Syrup Festival, were looking at it, and this is where I'm saying that we're having these blurred lines. As far as any signs that would be going to say the Gateway Park, which is where the BIA was proposing it, and they do have some funds that they were looking to put to use there. The question that I raised to them was exactly the same thing. There has to be some policy in place by the township as to what's appropriate and how the signs are going to be used, who's going to maintain them, who's going to be running them. So these are just some of the things I think need to be put in place regardless whether the BIA paid for it, I mean, if the BIA put it at the Gateway Park, it's township control, so township would still have to have some kind of an agreement in place as to what's gonna go on there. Is it appropriate? So, I'm in agreement in earmarking some money. I just, struggling with earmarking that much right off the bat when, I think we have to kind of look at where they're gonna go, how many do we need, what's going to go on them, and what the policies are. So certainly in agreement with earmarking some coin, but not that much. Thank you.
Sorry, C.R. Schmidt, would those lights be DC eligible in any of the communities?
These signboards?
Yes.
I don't think so, but I could double check. Just on the digital signboards though, and again, the intent is that we wanted to treat all community halls the same, so obviously didn't want to put one here and not others. So the intent was 6 of them at $40,000 each. I will comment though, and I know some councillors have already made these comments about a policy. The other concern is, to be honest with you, is if we're going to be managing these things, is do we have the resources to be able to manage these things? So I don't want to say that we need more staff, but we may need more staff in order to manage this thing, because our communications officer right now is pretty much at full capacity. So in order to manage some of the things that the messaging that may be required on some of these boards, again, maybe one we might be able to get by with, but as we potentially grow to 2 or 3 or 4 throughout the municipality, it might be a challenge. So.
But these would still potentially be revenue generating through rentals. Would that not fall under the purview of the new bookings person that was just brought on board?
Possibly, Mr. Mayor, but that individual is going to be probably over capacity already with, again, keep in mind that some of the bookings that were happening previously, sports fields, ice rentals, and so on and so forth, were all done at a different level previously. Those have all now been pushed onto that position. So, again, we're still, and obviously with the addition of EDHS, and we're still building that program up. So, I'm not sure that individual is going to be able to take on more. But again, could be something that if we start with one of these and we pilot it and see how it works and see how the amount of resources that are required, we might be in a better position to have a discussion with council as to, if we move forward, you know, what would we potentially need both from a capital and operating perspective. So.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Province has said that there may be some money available to for efficiencies and streamlining operations, that kind of thing. And would it be possible to view some of these signs as a way of streamlining and making our communication to the public? I'm just trying to see if it might fit into that particular window, and might be some dollars available down the road for that, in order that we're communicating to the public in a more efficient manner. Do you think that that might fit into that box in some way, shape, or form? CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cabral. I guess, you know, these are efficiency monies, so this was the first kick of the can, if you will, through the regional government review, whereby we didn't have to apply for it. So, you know, we're suggesting that this would be improving our efficiencies and our communications, if you will. So, you know, I can't see us not trying that, to be honest with you. Whether they'll accept it, I don't know, but definitely it is something that we could consider down the road if we chose to walk that path.
Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. On the digital signs, Menacing was looking at purchasing our own years ago. We did quote it anywhere between $28,000 and $42,000. I like this initiative. It's been going on for a long time. A, I do the sign now. Sometimes I don't have time and it sits there for a couple months. And B, I can't reach the top. And C, sometimes it's really cold. So on those aspects, I think as a community initiative, it's gonna visually look better.
Thank you. I'm just doing a running Excel here, and just for information, if we start at 677,000 to round it off, and we we take off the scheduling booking software Hillsdale Crosswalk, tables and chairs menacing and Anton Mills, high shoulder removal, loader scale, tire changer, portable PA, weather station, service delivery review, facility, which we might not have to, facilities access control, HR management system, iPad tablets, LED menacing pavilion, animal control software, LEDs in one ballpark for $46,250, and digital signs, reduce it from 240 to 200, given that there'd be some sort of sharing. That comes to 572,000, leaving 104,203 remaining. CEO Schmidt?
So, Mr. Mayor, at the beginning, you had mentioned 677, so we don't have 677 available. We have utilized some of those funds, so the starting point should be 628.
But what we've utilized, if you go back to the previous slide, I think I mentioned in my deduction,
Those
the
two things?
13, the
Those
35,
two? Okay.
and yeah, so I started at the top number and included those components underneath.
Okay.
Discussion? Councillor Cabral.
I really enjoyed listening to you ramble them off, Mayor Allen, but was that a suggestion or just a way to look at what's up here?
I think through the discussion we've had thus far, that it's a suggestion that we look at those and leave $104,000 unallocated of this at this point to be determined in future, what the proper usage would be. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I agree with most of it, except for the 200,000 for the digital signboards. I don't think we need that much money. I'd really like to see the facility review first. So if we could earmark $100,000 for those projects that you feel are already approvable or that you think are warranted or the CRA has researched, then I'd be supportive of that, but not the 200.
Okay, appreciate the comments. It's a moot point, because if we reduce one, we increase the other, and if we need to access more later, that's accessible. So if we reduce that to 100,000, then we're spending 204,000, and we've got 472,732 remaining to determine in future. Councillor Ritchie.
Regarding the tables and chairs, I support it. I know what it's like. Like in our second term there, I preached about getting new bleachers there at the Phelpston Ballpark. These things, they just give you an arsehole full of splinters. You couldn't sit down for a month. But anyways, we got some new ones. The 16.5, I like to increase that to 20,000 and grab a few chairs for the Phelpston Rink House, because, you know, it's a little scary there. So if we could, like, I support it 100%. If we can increase it $3,500, grab a few chairs and tables, I'm a happy camper, and that would kill two birds with one stone. If we could do that, is that possible, Director, Deputy Director, Manager? Sorry. My fault.
What's the cost of the chairs, Manager Anderson, please, on a per?
Yeah, so through you, Mayor Allen, to council. I don't know the exact cost on the chair right now per unit price, but possibly maybe recommending repurposing some of the chairs from Minnesing Community Center and some of the better tables. That would be, you know, ideal. Yeah, no, and they're still in decent shape, I think, for the purpose of that facility, for sure.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just on your numbers there, were you reducing the number with respect to the LED lighting at the ballpark here by a quarter or a half or something like that?
I was including just one, so I was reducing it by 3/4 to 1/4.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
46,000. Councillor Ritchie,
Mayor Allen, could you go back to the next slide, CEO Schmidt?
CEO?
Mr. Mayor, just on that one, and correct me, Manager Anderson, the 185,000 was for 2 ball diamonds, the existing ones, not for all 4. The LED lighting, the 185,000 LED lighting, that was just for the 2 existing, not for all 4, right? Yes.
Okay, in that case, it's 92,005 for one of the two. That means that we're spending, just a second. Means that we have 125,000 remaining, we're spending 552,000. Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to council. I've just had a staff member go out to see if I can reach out to Clark Multi-Trade, because my concern is I'm not even sure if there's enough power to run one set of lights. So I want to find that out before we kind of reduce that number there.
Are you saying that if we had two sets of lights, can you explain that a little further? If there's not enough power to run one set of lights?
Yes, so currently we don't have enough power to, the system is overloaded to run the two ball diamonds. The discussion was never had if we could run the one with the new LED lights and the one with the old existing lights. So I want to be 100% sure before we make a decision on the final numbers on how much we're
Councillor
asking.
Cabral?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Allen. This wasn't something that was budgeted for in the first place. So I'm just kind of thinking, be quite frank with you. If both of them are running now, like, are they both not running now? Because I would just see that if they're both running now and you turn one into LED, if all of these potential savings we're supposed to expect are available, I still think that we should move forward that way.
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral. So the CSA inspector will not turn the power back on to the two existing ball diamonds, let alone 3 ball diamonds, until the service is upgraded, whether that's through, the LED lights, replacing the LED lights, or replacing the service. So again, that's something that kind of I'm in the works of right now, trying to figure out, because it didn't cross my mind even to see if we could run with the 1 ball diamond.
Yes, go ahead.
What was the figure for upgrading the service?
Manager?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral, there was no actual figure. The contractor did reach out to Hydro One, and Hydro One's basically did not want to replace the transformer at the road because it was going to be too much of an expense. I did not get a number on that. So we would have had to replace the transformer at the road, the transformer here, and some of the electrical components in that bunker.
So if we just, if we remove that for now, because we're just wondering about the workability of it, and have digital signs at 200 instead of 240, that leaves still $117,500 to be able to consider for future out of this chunk of money. Deputy Mayor Coghlan.
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Manager Anderson. So what I'm hearing you say now is we have essentially a brand new facility that we've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into that is not going to be lit up on any diamonds because the CRA, or they won't allow light. So we will essentially have no revenue generated over the next course of the year to offset this cost. So my question is then, are we planning on leaving it dark and not renting the facility for a year? Or are we planning on moving forward, understanding there's 0 lights, there's 2 diamonds that are lit today. We need to light 2 more diamonds, but the diamonds that are lit today are no longer able because of, from what I'm understanding, they're underserviced, or there's not enough going to it. So we have 0 lighting on a diamond that we've just put over $500,000 into. So I'm sitting here going, I don't know, this doesn't make sense to me. Yes, it's a huge amount of money, and it's absolutely unfortunate that we need to spend it, but what's the point of having diamonds if they're not lit?
Manager Anderson?
Yes, so through you, Mayor Allen, to Deputy Mayor Coughlin, you are correct in saying that. Again, this is kind of the discussions that I've been trying to have with the contractor, and sorry, it's not CSA, it's ESA, so the electrical authorities on that. But sometimes these things take time, and I'm trying to get as much information as quickly as possible. On that, I can actually send him an email right now. I'm going to try to see what, what we require on that.
Just a quick question. If lighting these was so vital, why was this not included in the capital budget? CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, as you're all aware, there's been some transition with staffing over the last year. So, unfortunately, I guess during the preparation for this project, and I'll say this word, but I don't use it lightly, there was an oversight whereby obviously we wanted to move forward with the project and have lighting on the new ball diamonds. With Manager Anderson taking on the project in late September, it came to light that with the addition of these two ball diamonds, for whatever reason, I guess there was no discussion that power was going to be an issue. And so through that, this is what's come to light, is that, pardon the pun, but this is what's kind of come to head here is that, we have two baseball diamonds that did have enough power source. However, with the addition of these two others, which I believe have LED, still now we don't have enough power source to light all four of them. And as Manager Anderson indicated, now the authorities are essentially saying you have to do one or the other, otherwise you're not getting power to any of them, from what I understand. And so we're kind of in a dilemma here, obviously.
So would it be possible if we looked at lighting, providing $92,500 to light one of the unlit ones this year, and then the other next year, that would basically use up all the funds available. It'd be $25,000 left over. So.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I'm not technical on this side, so I don't even know if changing the lights on one of the existing is going to give us enough power supply to light all four. That's where I don't know.
Okay.
So that I
Councillor
don't.
Cabral had his hand up first then.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm at a loss, and I have to apologize here, but whatever we do to these lights, the fact's going to be that we're underserviced. And any expansion in the future, we're going to run into the same problem. So I would suggest that we put a big pause on it until we find out, A, how's it going to be us getting the additional power, because we're going to need it one way or the other, and B, if that's going to happen, what are the costs? And if we do the power and it's a reasonable cost, then we can probably keep running with what we have, as opposed to going and spending money to do something when we don't know if we're going to be able to manage down the road. Like, I'm sorry, but I can't support it just based on that, because all we're doing is we're throwing a big Band-Aid on it. And then 2 years down the road, we're going to want lights somewhere else, or another field, or another area here that we're going to develop, and we're going to be in the same place we are today. So that's a big issue for me, and I apologize. As far as the rental stream goes, we're only not going to be renting it during the nighttime hours. And, as the summer draws near, it gets dark later and later and later. So, I mean, we still will have some opportunity to rent it, but I do see some real problems and issues trying to move forward with this. I don't mind setting some money aside, but I really think we need a definitive report coming back to council from staff as to, here's the options to increase our power, and here's the costs, and if it comes in less than this, that might be the route for us to take in the short term. And if it's going to be extensive, I don't see how we can avoid that, but that's my take on what's going on now.
Before turning to Councillor Coughlin, taking them out for now, and considering all the rest that we've discussed, leaves $117,500 of these funds to be able to determine whatever use in the future. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Okay, I'm not a counselor. No, you didn't. Anyway, so I'm curious as to if I can have an elaboration as to how this is a Band-Aid solution, and also to what further development or expansion may occur, because to my understanding, this is full build-out of this park. Also, I'd like to know who we rent this to, other than the two potential high school tournaments or the Minising softball tournament. What percentage of the rentals are done throughout the evening? Because these diamonds are like full throughout the evening, so what's our communication to our user groups going to be when we don't have any more men's fastball, women's fastball, hardball, softball, nowhere for tournaments to happen? The point of expanding this is that we already have an identified need for more diamonds. So now by not moving forward with this, we're actually decreasing diamonds in the area. So I'm just curious how that's gonna happen. But if I can start with how this is a Band-Aid solution, and also what potential build-out we're talking about in the future.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think based on the comments that are being provided right now, and all legitimate comments, I think it'd be appropriate for this to be referred back to staff, and we can report back to council with better information, if you will.
Deputy, follow-up?
And again, through you to CA, wouldn't that report, if we leave it earmarked, isn't that report coming back to council anyway? Because it's over the 50,000, so to me, this is placeholding the funds to ensure that the work can move forward, but we would still get a report back from staff before anything moves forward. And also, isn't this already awarded to a local electrical company? This hasn't gone out? I thought that Minnings got it. Okay, yeah, so it's already been awarded to a local company, so how does,
Mr. Mayor, all that I'm suggesting is there's a lot of hearsay kind of going around here, and let us go back and find the facts and provide council with the facts, and then we can have council make a decision on this, so.
Okay, so, Councillor Ritchie.
I wanted to speak about the loader scales for the scales for the loaders.
Go ahead.
Can you go back to that, please? Loader scales for the public works yard. The concern that I have through to the director is these front-end loaders. We've had them for a few years now. I know the new loaders, you can buy them with scales on them, and I'm sure you know that. So my question is, I really don't care to go and spend $20,000 on something where we should be maybe getting ready to trade these loaders in and get something with new scales on them. If these loaders, like, I mean, you can trade them in at any number of hours, but usually we get good value coming from a municipality because they've been well looked after. And if they have 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 hours on them, we can trade them in and get something new back in return with scales. So that's a concern that I have with spending the $20,000 on, and maybe you can elaborate on that, Director.
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Ritchie. Right now in the draft 10-year capital, we do have Yard 2's loader up for renewal in 2021 and Yard 1 in 2022. Again, that's draft and not yet approved. Right now, we're estimating that those would be $400,000 each. The additional, like the addition of them onto these loaders would be equipment that we can keep. I know right now the proposal from one of the yards was to keep one of those loaders for the pit, because the one at the pit is I guess not, or to keep it for the pit because right now it runs back and forth. And then certainly as we get into 2021 and 2022, we may be looking at keeping both, because we're certainly going to have more subdivisions online where we have to go in and remove snow and do additional works in there.
follow on, Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the new ones that we're proposing for 2021, I would assume for that kind of money, they have scales on them, do they not? But having said that, for that kind of money, there should be some value in the ones that we're trading in, if we trade them in or if we just keep them. Okay, thank you.
So the motion before council now is,
So if we start at the top.
all right, okay. So council, before us now, we have the list of the modernization funding, and it is to the discretion of the clerk to start at the top and move through each individual item to remove or add them. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Just to throw this out there, that I would be in support of going forward with the ball diamond lights, because I think that it's a more important piece of what our recreation has done so far, and do away with the digital signboards for now, and waiting again until the facility review incorporates that. So if there's an appetite for that, I'd be in full support.
If we did that at the 185,000 for the lights and took out the digital signs completely, then that would leave $132,500 remaining of the 677,000. CAO Schmidt?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, would it be possible just to go through each one of them and have council decide yes or no? Just so that we're all clear as to what's included in that list. Again, just, you know, we've talked about each one of them. The Harry Adams Park, obviously, I believe Councillor Mott Chapman said remove. Can we just go through each one of them just so that we're all clear as to yay or nay as to what we're doing? Just, I want to make sure everybody's clear and I'm clear as to how we're potentially spending these monies, because my numbers aren't necessarily adding up to what you have, so I'm missing something, obviously.
Okay, you go ahead then.
So I guess we've talked about the Harry Adams Park, so my understanding is from council is that one's off the list, and IFC will come forward on that one. The LED lighting at the Menacing Pavilion, I believe, is still in. I believe, yes. The tables and chairs at Menacing Community Center, I believe, are still in. The community projector, I believe, is still in. Tables and chairs are still in. The digital signboards, I'm not 100% sure what we're doing with those, if we're leaving them in or we're adding some money or we're adjusting that or what we're doing there. So maybe I'll stop there.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn, and I'm agreeable to have the amount lowered. I do believe that there are communities that are ready to move forward with this initiative and have been basically waiting with money in a bank account ready to go. And understanding the BIA wants to move forward with it, and same with our Maple Syrup Festival Committee. I'm curious if we can leave it earmarked so that should the communications policy come forward to council and we are ready to move forward with purchasing signs in 2020, that funding is available. I agree that I don't think we should just put them up in every location right away. I think strategically moving this in, as you said, we don't even have the staff to get it going. So I think leaving some money there will communicate to the hall boards and the community groups that are looking to partner with us. And we have been continuously talking about it. I don't know what that number should be if we're looking at 2 signs and a policy, or 3, doesn't matter to me. But I would like to see something remain in the budget so that we can continue to move forward on it.
My recommendation is you either pilot 1 or you pilot 2, so either $50,000 or $100,000 you put in there as an allocation towards it, and like I said, 50 would be for 1, 100,000 would be for potentially 2 of them. Again, there could be some offset of revenues and so on and so forth, so obviously we might not need all that money, but at least there's provisional money in there for us to try to move forward with 1 or 2 as a pilot, and we can come back to council and seek which locations you would like to pilot. That's a suggestion to council.
Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Not to complicate matters, but the lights at Doran Park, were they not an ask of $75,000 to retrofit them? This one's $185 for basically the same service work. I'm wondering if that figure should be actually lower. If they're asking $75 for Doran Park lights, why would these ones be
Doran Park
92 and a half?
Tennis lights. tennis
Oh,
lights.
tennis
Yeah,
lights.
not,
Apologize, I
baseball.
thought it was for the ball diamond. Sorry, thank you for the clarification.
Go ahead, CL.
so again, so I'm not sure where council is with the digital signboards, if 50 or the $100,000 mark is something that you could be agreeable to.
With my numbers, if you have both LED lights at 185 and 100,000 for digital signs, that still leaves 25,000 remaining.
So then on the facility assessment control, you're agreeable to the facility assessment control and monitoring? You're agreeable to the service delivery review? You're agreeable to the high shoulder removal equipment? And essentially everything on this page as well.
Okay, comments?
And the confirmed amount, not that I'm doubting your accounting skills.
I have this actually fully spent.
I think that's, if we could have it, I mean, it's important for us to know, so if I could establish the discrepancy, that would be beneficial to myself.
I think from the numbers that I have it as the full amount is fully spent, but again, the mayor and myself can go back and take a look at both of our reconciliations and provide an update to members of council, but based on what you're providing here, I see it as fully spent.
Okay, so can we go forward on a motion then with respect to this to include, yes, go ahead, Clerk Chaparral.
Thank you. The motion would read that council hereby approves the following projects. New LED lighting, Minnesing, tables and chairs, Minnesing, tables and chairs, Anton Mills, digital signboards in the amount of $100,000, LED lights at Tree Nursery Sports Park, facility access control and monitoring, service delivery review, high shoulder removal equipment, loader scales, iPad tablets, human resources management system, tire changer and balancer, animal control software, portable PA system, and weather stations, and that the funding for these projects be provided through the modernization funds, small and rural funding.
Okay, comment to mover and seconder. Are you moving it?
Councillor Cabral? Who's moving it? Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman? Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just had a comment with respect to the PA and the projector. Projector's omitted then, is that what I'm hearing?
No, it's included too.
It's included in,
Yeah.
oh, I
Yeah.
missed it, apologize.
Okay, all those in favor? That's carried unanimously, thank you. Okay, so we're on to this one. Okay, so we're at the point of referral of the draft budget for approval. I need a mover and seconder for that. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Ritchie. That the draft 220 tax-based operating budget as presented be referred to the December 18, 2019 meeting of council for final approval, and that the draft 220 wastewater rate base operating budget as presented be referred to the December 18, 2019 meeting of council for final approval, and that the draft 220 wastewater rate based operating budget as presented be referred to December 18, 2019 meeting of council for final approval, and that the draft 220 capital budget and 10-year capital plan as presented be referred to the December 18, 2019 meeting of council for final approval, and that the 220 policing charge remain at $240 per property for all properties except for farmland and managed forest properties, which will be charged $120 per property, be referred to December 18, 2019 meeting of council for final approval, and that the 220 tax rate bylaw be presented, including the county and education requisitions, as soon as the tax ratios have been approved by County of Simcoe. All those in favor? Carried. The bylaw to accept this, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Moore, that the bylaw 219-097 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council and the special meeting held on November 25, 27, 2019 and December 2, 5, 9, and 11, 2019, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And adjourning, mover and seconder, Ritchie and Cabral. that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 1:25 PM to meet again a regular meeting on December 18, 2019, 6:30 PM, Council Chambers at Min Center, Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, staff, council, audience.